Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Thursday. Kind of switching it up on you guys a little bit. So those of you guys who are here on an off day, thank you for joining me. I hope you guys are enjoying the end of your week. We're going to be doing live astrology readings this evening. I couldn't skip out this week on you guys because we have a lunar eclipse that is setting up tomorrow. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking about how the eclipse is going to be affecting their chart. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer. I work both with the art of tarot as well as the Sabian symbols. And we do readings once a week. Generally on Fridays, we alternate. We're going to be doing astrology readings this evening. So I'll leave the queue open for a little bit. If you're new to my channel, basically we're going to be doing readings on a donation base. There's a QR code right here. You can scan that. It's going to take you to my PayPal. All donations are $50 for a question in regards to either the eclipse or transits going on in the natal chart. And there was some people that were asking questions about synastry. Synastry is a different price. So if you do want a synastry reading, the donation is $65. Please listen to the requirements, because for me to be able to look at your astrology, I need some specific information from you. I'm going to need at least your first name, the month, day, and year of your birth, along with the AM or PM time and the location, the city, state, and country, please. I'm here in the United States, so if you want to spell out the month, that would be a lot easier, just to make sure that we have the right date for you. And I'll cast your chart live. We'll take a look at what's going on with your transits, and we can hang out and also chat about it in the chat. We have a number of people who are already in the queue, so thank you guys for waiting. I appreciate it. Just to give you guys a heads up in terms of who we have, we've got a couple of obviously level 3 memberships. So we're going to be talking to Coco and Nancy. So thank you guys. I got your question. Followed by, we've got Jasmine, Maritza, Deanna, Kara, Natalie. I've got Vonnie, Lee, and Sage Moon Creative. Actually, Sage Moon, I got your birthday, but I didn't get the city. So if you can let me know. I'm going to be using a different format. I'm using a different software today because I figured it would just be easier. We might have a lot more readings because it's kind of on the eve of the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. So hopefully I can move through these a little bit more quickly. I will have to take a break after Lee and then input new charts. I'll probably leave the queue open for you guys to donate to be able to get into the reading signups for maybe about 20 minutes or so. So you might want to catch that, because as it stands now, it's already going to be probably about an hour or so. And then if you miss me, no worries. We'll be back in 2 weeks doing more astrology. Okay. So big hi to everybody. Let me catch up in the chat and see who we've got. So we've got Coco, Nancy, what's up? Hey, Anna. Hey, Marcia. Hey, Claire. Hey, Chase. Hi, London. Elizabeth. Amira. There's Katie. Okay. Just remind me when I get there to put that in. I appreciate it. What's up, Amb? Hey, Natalie. No worries. I can answer those 2 questions if you want. Let me know. Hey, Maritza. Hey, Paula. Yeah, because I saw for you, who was it? Who was it? It was Natalie. Natalie was asking questions about synastry and asking questions about launch dates, so I can do both if you want. Hey, Roxanne. Hey, Oldie. And Lisa. Good evening. Good morning, depending on where you are. Where are you guys tuning in from? Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. It's really helpful. It helps because it lets other people know that we're going live. It's also going to kind of push this content into YouTube, so it's getting more visibility. So I appreciate it. I see a hello from Wisconsin. Are you a Packer fan? My family's all from Menominee Falls, so we are a little bummed out about Rogers, but hey, it happens. All right, so as many of you guys know, like I said, there's a lunar eclipse tomorrow. I'm just gonna tell you guys in advance, there's probably gonna be a lot of really heavy readings tonight, like lots of stuff. People are really probably going through the cosmic purge. So there may be some more intense or taboo topics. We also might have some people that might be a little Looney Tunes. So we never really know what's gonna happen when we're reading around eclipse periods. So if heavy stuff comes up, just be forewarned. There can be trigger warnings in some of these readings. And equally, let's be kind to one another, please, both in the chat as well as people who are getting readings, and just the patience. I really appreciate it. I was kind of between a rock and a hard place. I was like, I really don't want to do it on Friday, and I knew that if I do it on Saturday, it was too late. So right now, the South Node and the Moon are hanging out together, so people are all emotionally unloading. So let's try to be good to one another, please. Also, Paula, sure, can you send me your info and I'll plug you in and I'll add you to the list of people that I'm going to be chatting with. So it would be Coco, Nancy, and then Paula. So I can plug that info in. Yep. Oh, hey Claire. Yeah, the eclipse is actually going to be right on my natal Pluto, and I have Sun, Mars, Mercury, Pluto all within 10 degrees of each other. So I'm taking all of tomorrow off because I don't want to deal with anybody's shift. I would rather not. So when you get that, send that over to me, Paula, and I'll kind of get rolling with everybody. So let's go ahead and start first with Coco, and then we'll do Nancy, and then we'll do Paula. If we can just save Paula's info so I don't have to scroll back through it, that would be really helpful. Coco, are you there? Are you on the other side of the interweb? I have to say, I'll read your statement so people kind of understand what we're taking a look at. But Coco she's a level 3 member, so thank you for your support. She wanted to donate to get a synastry reading. She said, why is my mother the Wicked Witch of the West? She's a good provider, but not a good parent. She's always been mean since I was a child. It's only gotten worse over the years. I believe I spoke my last words to her this week. Are we mortal enemies, or do we have some past life stuff going on? Looking for some insight. So your mom's birthday is November 18th, 1946. And your birthday is December 1st, 1989. Giving you a Virgo rising and a Sag sun and a Capricorn moon. Okay. Okay, so first things first, we've got your astrology on the inner wheel, your mom's astrology on the outer wheel. But before I even get into talking about the synastry aspects, I just want to note a couple of things. I kind of chuckled to myself because I was like, wow, do we have the same mom? And then I looked at your Capricorn stellium in the 4th house. Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Venus, and the moon. Okay, so first of all, some astrologers say the mother can be the 4th house. Some say it could be the father. It really depends. But having Saturn connected to the 4th house, just generally speaking, can be this theme of ancestral family patterning. You know, Saturn and Capricorn can be kind of cold, icy, working hard, something revolving around karma and the family legacy, okay? Also, you have factored into this the moon, which can be about mothers and mother figures, very close to Saturn, actually in between Saturn and Neptune. So that can be that feeling of kind of being estranged or disconnected or not feeling the love or not getting the nurturing that you need. And then you've got Venus there. So I have the same stellium. I don't have my moon there, but I have Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Venus is my chart ruler. So I know how that works. Just looking at that alone would be enough for me to be like, okay, there's something going on here in terms of the family connection or the emotional connection with the mom, and that there may be some ancestral patterning from mother to daughter relationships that comes through your natal chart. So I didn't even have to look at her aspects, but looking at her aspects, she's a Scorpio sun, right? She's got Venus in Scorpio, Venus retrograde right behind her sun. So that can also talk a little bit about the challenges that she has with just relationships with women in general. So when the sun is kind of like under the beams, when Venus is under the beams of the sun and it's retrograde, it can be somebody who can sometimes be particularly kind of prickly or kind of spiteful, maybe. Remember, Venus is about opening up to love and relationships. Now, in particular for her, if I'm not looking at her ascendant yet, I'll look at it in a second, but if I flip this around, here we go. She's a Sag rising, and she's got her sun in Scorpio and her moon in Virgo. Venus is the ruler of her 5th house of children, okay? So being that Venus is retrograde conjunct the sun, and the sun is intercepted in the 8th house, it means like there is something unusual or strange that she does in regards to the relationship with her kids. Maybe she has a hard time understanding them. Maybe it wasn't necessarily a part of her goals prior to having children, the idea of like being a parent, right? Doesn't mean that she doesn't love or doesn't care, but that may have been challenging for her. Your planets in Sagittarius fall into her 12th house. Specifically, your sun conjuncts her Mars, and you have Mercury also in her 12th house. So 12th house is kind of like that blind spot. Does it mean that you guys are mortal enemies? No, not necessarily. I think that your planets falling in the 12th house represents things that are karmically playing out that need to be kind of completed. And I also noticed that you guys have some South Node contact as well, where your South Node is in conjunction to her Pluto. So that can be this feeling of going through a really strong emotional, psychological, or financial shift as a result of like you coming into her life. Okay, let me flip it around again. I think the moon on the ascendant is nice because it does talk about that emotional nurturing and the ability to kind of like come together, and that there are some similarities in terms of her emotional habits and your ascendant. So that in itself is actually a really great placement to have with a mother and a daughter. It can indicate, you know, being nurtured and taken care of, but there's some heavy stuff that's going on, I think, with the South Node and with your natal stellium in the 4th house. When you talk about being a generational curse breaker, I wonder how much you know about her relationship with her mom, right? Because you having Uranus being the ruler of your North Node and the 5th house tied into Saturn can be the sense of being like, I am not, you know, I'm making the decision to, you know, not get married or have kids right away, or I'm making the decision not to sacrifice my emotional needs for children. And that in itself is the breaking of the patterns, breaking of the habits. So that's good on you. When you talk about the fact that recently, you know, you had like a bit of a tiff with her and you think that it's possible that like you're not going to be engaging any longer, I think that stems more from the transits, the fact that, you know, you're seeing Pluto continue to move through your 4th house. And over the next couple of months, you're going to see Pluto retrograde back into Capricorn, which is going to be literally about dealing with a heavy emotional situation with a parent or a home situation. And the nodes are going to square. So it's putting the pressure on really outing some of the toxic emotional connections that might be happening with like relatives or family members or with a parent. So for a lot of Libra risings, I'm seeing this. Even in my own life, I'm seeing some of this stuff. And I've had similar themes to what you're kind of expressing in terms of problems with, you know, the iciness and also like the on and off and the back and forth. So a lot of it's just your astrology. What I think she has to offer you is the fact that she does have Jupiter conjunct your Pluto, which means she can teach you a lot about toxicity. She can teach you about what is and what is not worth holding on to. Jupiter is about wealth, and it is about knowledge, and it is about growth. And being in a water sign, it's really highlighting your natal, you know, Mars and Pluto. Those are two very, very, very hard-hitting planets being in the sign of Scorpio. That being conjunct tells me that you have a lot of like piss and vinegar in you. And she teaches you how to use that. Do you want the poison to be the remedy, or do you want that to be the weapon? And so I think that that's one way of looking at the dynamic that you have with her is like, okay, do you want to carry that around with you? Is it worth, you know, kind of harboring that in your body? Is it something that you want to carry around, or do you want to transmute that and use it as fuel to get to where you want to go? A lot of that is also like conflicts over ownership or money or resources. There can be a sense of you looking at your mom going, she worked her life away, she worked really hard to provide, but at what cost? So the sacrifice that she's making, or the trauma that came up from constantly striving to provide, that's also her Jupiter conjuncture Mars and Pluto, showing you, you know, is it worth making some of those moves just to have the financial security? You know, in the long run, is it going to be worth that? I don't really think that you are enemies, but I will tell you, being someone personally who's got a lot of planets in Scorpio and in Capricorn in the same degrees, I noticed a reoccurring pattern in my life that I was attracting a lot of people that had a lot of Sagittarius placements. Saturn in Sag, Uranus in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Sag, like South Node there. And I couldn't quite figure out, like, what the hell is it with all this like Sag stuff coming into my life, because I don't have any placements in the mutable signs equally. I only have one planet in a fire sign. Well, the midpoint between Scorpio placements and Capricorn placements is Sagittarius. So I would encourage you to go and do some research on midpoints. You can go into your astrology and you can look at, like, you can generate that report usually online. And it looks like a lot of like your Mars, Pluto, and like Venus midpoints is going to be like right around where her South Node is. And you're also going to have other midpoints that are going to be like right around where her Mercury or her Sun is. So just the fact that she's got all these placements that are in the late degrees of Scorpio, early degrees of Sag, which are activating your midpoints, I also think that this is really opening you up to realizing, like, hey, there's a need to communicate, there's a need to share, there needs to be a back and forth kind of conversation and an exchange. Yeah, she's got Mars on your Sun, so that can be rather combative, especially with the sign of Sagittarius. It can be about morals and ethics and things relating to philosophy and belief system and education and right from wrong. And also she's got her natal Uranus, which is in direct opposition to your Mercury, which is your chart ruler. So there can be this feeling of somebody challenging you in general, how you think, how you communicate, what you share, what you know. And it feels rather combative because it's coming into a square with her natal moon. So it's really actually highlighting the natal Mercury square ascendant that you have natally. All being in mutable signs, it means that there's change. So maybe you've noticed throughout your life, there's periods where your mom is more available and she's ready and she's open and she's nurturing, but then then she's kind of flippant and she can get kind of like weird on you and be super judgmental, and that there is not a lot of consistency, right? But a lot of that's also, she's got moon square Uranus, so that tells me she's got some, wounding revolving around stability with mother figure. So she may not have had the nurturing that she necessarily needed. So you see that kind of plays out in your relationship with her, where she may feel challenged. Keep in mind her South Node is in Sagittarius. So with your Sun being very close to Mars and very close to the South Node, is it possible that you guys had religious battles and wars against each other in the past? Yes, it is, because it literally falls into the South Node Sagittarius archetype. And so then we start looking at, okay, South Node Mars, South Node Sun, ego issues, conflict, clashing, arguments. And yeah, I think you guys are clearing some stuff out. But in this lifetime, to me, it looks like you're fighting more with words. You're fighting more about beliefs or philosophy or like religious things. And that brings up a lot of like challenges. Believe it or not, I feel like with Neptune conjunct the moon and Saturn in the 4th house, this can talk about really heavy religious or spiritual beliefs that have been ingrained in multiple generations in your family. And, there may be some sense of feeling like they have to participate in that, or that they have to make sacrifices for that religion, or that they have to, go to church, or, believe something specific. And that's in your astrology. They may fight against intuition. They may fight against other forms of like spirituality. And there may be a sense of them not acknowledging that side of their life, and you kind of welcome it with open arms, Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Go and look into the midpoints. Go and look into the South Node Sun and the Sun Mars synastry. That's gonna be a big one for you guys. And it might be something that you really want to watch over the next couple of months as the North and the South Node come into a square with Pluto, with unearthing all of this stuff. And it's like literally having to dig all the rot out and get it out of your house. So be mindful of like having her in your home, having conversations with her while you're at home, things like that. I'm not saying don't invite her over, don't talk to her, but be mindful of having that energy in your home space. be really conscious about kind of clearing and kind of smudging or doing whatever you have to do ritually to kind of clean that out so you're not repeating some of those patterns. And watch for when the eclipses start. Now in Aries and Libra, you're going to see as the eclipses move, the North and the South Node are going to start squaring all of your stuff. It wants to push all of that out. Okay? Good luck. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, Paula, I got you. Thank you. I'll add you to my list. If you guys want to get in the queue, I'm going to leave it open for another 10 minutes. You can scan this down here and you can sign in. Let me see if I can find this info. Okay, so we have Nancy. And let's see, what did Nancy ask? Stephanie, I see you. I'll throw you in there too. Nancy, did you have a particular question? Here we go. Unsure if I can start cooking clients right now to the end of the year. Okay. Start cooking for clients right now or wait until the end of the year? Okay, good question. All right. Okay, so looking at your transits, clients is going to be more so relating to your 7th house. And it looks like your 7th house lord is Mercury. You've got Pluto that's now coming into a trine with Mercury. So that's really opening up the power of you being able to work with other groups of people and service clients. That's going to be a long-term trine that's going to be playing out for a while. Couple things that I would just take into consideration. When you talk about cooking for clients, do you need like a commercial kitchen or a space to be doing this from, or are you going to need some help? Because you're going to have a Venus retrograde here through your 6th house, July through early September, which can bring up the themes revolving around like, do I have the money to have a commercial cooking space? You know, do I have to hire assistants? So take into consideration doing something prior to that period can be like a little discombobulated, because it can be like a period of you having to kind of scramble to find the right team, the right space. You might think that you have the finances for it and then be like, okay, well, do I have consistent clients that can justify me paying for this? That's just food for thought. When Venus goes retrograde, it's going to hit your natal moon, okay, which is going to be working for yourself. It's going to hit your natal Venus, which is obviously going to represent money and space and time and like the women maybe that you're working with or the food that you're serving. And then it's going to hit your Mars, which is going to be about where you're going, you know, how far you're willing to kind of cater or, you know, go to people if you end up charging more money to go and cook for people or bring food onto location. The astrology is really good. I mean, you just had a North Node eclipse in your 2nd house, which is setting you up to be able to make more money. I feel like if this were me, I would use the July through early September period while Mercury is retrograding in your 7th and while Venus is retrograding in your 6th to start getting everything organized, okay? Be very mindful of like signing leases. If you can do like a month-to-month option, and if you want to do a temporary kitchen space up until that period and then try to find something that's going to be more affordable, I'm okay with that. But like I said, take into consideration, a lot is going to change then. The fact that there's going to be a retrograde in your 6th house of schedule, routine, and help, and the fact that you're going to have a Mercury retrograde in your 10th house of actual business, those are the 2 times that you are going to see that there's going to be the most change going on within your schedule and also clients. I'm confident though that with Pluto in a trine to Mercury that you're going to have the ability to be able to start seeing people. Are you open to like going and, you know, renting out something temporarily? Are you open to having like a shared kitchen space and not having your own space? Are you willing to go and cook for people within like their homes or within their businesses if they have the wherewithal to be able to you know, give you everything that you need to cook? Because if you do, I would recommend doing that. What's going to happen then when we get later in the summer, and I actually think it might be that some commercial spaces become also more readily available and more affordable. As we start to see things get kind of wonky here economically, going further into the summer, you might find like a super deal when Mars and Venus come together. And that'll be probably right around early July, but you might find out like, but it's not ready and somebody's moving out of it and I got to get ready to get in there. So you really want to make sure whichever space you're looking at or whoever you're talking to that they're going to be able to honor the agreement that you guys make. So because clients is ruled by Mercury and you're going to have a Mercury retrograde in your second half of August, and Venus is going to be about the money that other people owe you, I don't want to see you like get into a situation where you rush into something really too soon. And you don't have enough clients to justify renting that space, or you get into a space that's like kind of a hot mess and you're sharing it with the wrong people. A lot can go sideways there. But retrogrades are great because they help get things in order. So the more that I look at this, I feel like that, August going into September period is when you're getting ready. And I think that you're actually going to be feeling more capable of being able to start seeing clients right when Mercury goes direct and when the sun is in Virgo and it's coming into a trine with Uranus. So the real kind of like home free date for me is going to be mid-September, right around like the 15th of September. So can you get everything ready up until that point? Yes. Can you see clients privately? Yes. But in terms of physically having your own space, that is going to be when things are going to start to kind of come together a whole lot more organically. So we're in beginning of May, June, July, August. So about 3 months. So you either need to be strategically planning, or I would say try to see clients and save as much money as physically possible before signing a lease or agreeing to anything. Look for a deal that's like a ganga deal, where it might be like you've got somebody who was supposed to finish out their lease and they went bankrupt, and somebody says, well, we need somebody in here, we're willing to cut you a deal. Do you want to come in? Be mindful that you may have to hire people to help you come in, clean, set things up, get things ready, because the 6th house is also about assistance. But that may be the way to play it, is just to extend it out about 3 months. And then I think you're going to find like a perfect opportunity to get into a space that you're going to stay in. Hopefully that's helpful. I saw we had Paula, we had Stephanie. We're gonna leave the queue open for just a couple more minutes, so I will give you guys roll call in just a second and let you know who I have. Hey Sonia, thanks for joining us. Thank you for donating, I appreciate it. Let's see, Natalie, see you. Okay, I'll plug you guys in just a second. So let's get Paula. Paula, I think I actually already have you. Let me open this up. You have a specific question, Paula, or do you just want me to look at, let me edit this. Do you just want me to look at the eclipse for you? You're welcome. How's my summer gonna go? I'm on a wait list for my operation. Okay, cool, gotcha. Let's take a look. So Saturn being connected to operations, you're going to have Saturn start coming into a sextile with Mercury in your 8th house. And you're also going to see Mercury oppose that. Obviously, going and getting a surgical procedure. I know this is not elective, but you have a lot of Scorpio. So depending on what comes up, I would say just be really mindful and cautious during the Mercury retrograde at the end of summer, like August going into September, because Mercury rules your ascendant, and also the Venus retrograde. So when you decide to get it, or if you find out that there is a date, I would recommend checking in with me so I can give you a good date for that. Just getting an idea of when around what time that might be good. It would be decent when, well, it could be like the end of August. Venus will still be retrograde, but at least you're gonna have, no, Mercury's gonna be retrograde too. Yeah, just check in with me. I don't wanna take you through all the dates, but there's some funky astrology for you getting a surgery this year. Okay, so taking you through the summer, obviously you're about to have this eclipse that's going to be in conjunction to your Venus tomorrow. okay, around 14 degrees. And it's opposing your moon and Saturn. So to me, this eclipse is kind of screaming like you really need rest right now. Rest and recuperation, both because there's an eclipse setting up, but also there's a Mercury retrograde that's going on over your moon. So not stressing out or worrying about working or resources or money or any of that stuff. Like there's a need to really just kind of relax and take it easy. When planets are in the 12th house, that's what we do. I have a feeling like when the sun is coming into Gemini and when we get Mercury out of this shadow period, right around mid-June, things are going to start feeling a little bit easier for you. I'm really liking that we're going to see trines between the sun and Mercury in Gemini to your north node. So that tells me like with the downtime that you may take over the next month or so, or just kind of resting or meditating or recuperating, you're going to have more clarity in regards to where you want to go for your career. Obviously, Gemini time is always really much about you, your needs, your goals, what you're doing, your body. But for Sagittarius, you're going to hear it's about your relationships. And so, you know, June, July will be a little bit more challenging for some of the mutable signs because we're going to see planets in Gemini come into a square with both Saturn and Neptune. So there's going to be a lot of like, am I on the same page with my bosses? Am I on the same page with my employers? Am I deciding about making decisions with work? Is my partner having to go away for work? So listen for those forecasts when they come through in June. I feel like if you can start like a consistent routine with Taurus being in your 12th house of hiking, being out in nature, gardening, doing some cooking, anything in regards to just like relaxing and connecting to the element of earth, it's going to be much easier for you to kind of bounce back energetically. I'm also really curious what's going to happen as we're getting into like June through September, because you're going to have Mars and Venus in your 4th house Placidus. So that can talk about getting ready to make changes within the home or considering or contemplating maybe moving, redecorating, revamping something. And then you will see Venus go retrograde over your South node. So that can bring back, you know, family members, that can bring back missing items at home, that can bring up the themes of like reworking something, like repainting, redoing something in the house. Anybody who's got significant placements in Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Taurus are going to feel this very strongly. So if you watch any of like the astrology forecasts, I would really recommend watching as early as when Venus moves into the sign of Leo, because it's going to come into the shadow and it's going to start squaring all this stuff in your chart. They can be bringing themes up revolving around you as a mom and your relationship with your kids and like learning how to have more fun and spending quality time with them. It can also be incentivizing you to be like, I want to do some kind of creative business from my home. I need the space to be able to work on something creatively. Female relatives who you haven't seen for some time may come and visit you as well. And it's going to be very loud. So when Venus starts ricocheting and squaring all of these things, when it first starts coming into these degrees right around mid-June, from like mid-June all the way up until, let's say right around the first week of July, pay attention, like literally take notes to what happens at your house, what happens with like a mother figure, what happens with, you know, your kids at home. Usually retrogrades bring things back from the past. So like if there's been kids that, you know, you haven't gotten to spend as much time with because they're teenagers and they're out and about and they're working and they're doing more, you might find that there's more time with them. On the flip side, like I said, if there are changes being done in the home, like I've heard people talk about Venus retrogrades where they go and they like pull out, you know, carpet, or they're like knocking down walls and then they find things that were hidden in the wall. Like I've had clients that tell me that they found money that was hidden in a wall. I've had clients tell me that they find little funny notes and things that, you know, the previous owners left there. Be mindful of what turns up in your house, especially because Venus rules your whole sign 12th and your 6th, that you may realize that it's time to like create more of like a Zen den in your bedroom. So you're rearranging things in your house, or you realize that, you know, it's time to kind of go through all the closets and get things organized. And, you know, you're talking to your kids about the fact that you want to kind of declutter and get rid of stuff. So you might have like a bunch of like extra hockey gear or like sports stuff or things from your kids, because Leo is children, that could bring in extra money, and you could have a yard sale and you could make, you know, a chunk of change. So generally Venus retrogrades, they bring karmically what is owed to us, good or bad. But being that it's going to square your Jupiter and it's going to square planets in your 12th house, I feel like there's room to bring things in that you didn't realize that you had that were valuable, that can help you kind of declutter your space and also bring in some extra resources. And yeah, you know, buying houses, moving, things like that, I would really advise you, if you need to do that, do it after the retrograde. And in some situations, I've seen clients also look at things and go like, well, we wanted to move, but then we realized it was cheaper just to kind of make the renovations and like do it ourselves in a current home that we own. So it's a good time to reevaluate how much money there is to spend, what your budget is, you know, realistically what you're going to get for your budget, and whether or not it makes sense to do some of these things yourself. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Paula. Let's see. Hey, Elle. Hey, Patrick. Hey, Rachel. So readings are now closed. So if we missed you, I will have to get you next time. And I think the only other level 3 person we have is going to be Stephanie. So let me see if I can find you in here really quick. And then I will give you guys the roll call, don't worry. Did I miss any level 3 people? I want to make sure that I didn't miss anyone. Am I missing? Hey Rachel, happy birthday. Stephanie, there she is. Okay, let me add Stephanie. So much easier to do it with this software, so much faster. Okay, Stephanie says, things have been rocky with friends, which I have like none now. Family finances, give me hope, please, thanks. All right, let me see what I can do for you. All right, so things have been rocky, I would assume, because, I mean, first of all, there's eclipses. You know, the eclipse that's happening has been in your first house, right? Or the eclipse that's coming in is in your first house. And that's about the self, okay? The first house is your actions, your behavior, your emotions, your body language, all of that stuff. And it's interesting because you're going to hear for Libra risings, oh, it's in your second house, but yours is in your Placidus first, which is like emotional purge. So there's a lot of that that's going on right now. And even though the eclipse hasn't hit yet, you've been feeling that since you had the eclipse around mid-April, because you had a solar eclipse in your 7th house at 29 degrees. 29 degrees of Aries is like the most intensity, the most conflict, the most back and forth, right? Because 29 represents, especially in Aries, like kind of just hitting a wall. So you might have felt like people have been really confrontational or kind of like aggressive with you. The 7th house is also where we air out our conflict or our drama. So that solar eclipse brought it in, which is now bringing like an emotional clearing, an emotional purge. Eclipses don't just affect us the day that we have the eclipse or the week that we have the eclipse. It plays out for weeks and sometimes even months. So for many Libra risings, the solar eclipse in Aries is bringing out the shadow self of just like, I don't care, like confrontational, aggressive, blunt, in your face. I have been feeling that as well as a Libra rising. This is really challenging for you because if you notice, you have 29, 29, you've got Pluto coming in and out of 29, and here is your Mercury, 29. So this is so many squares all at one time that it's very unusual, and it's expected that there is going to be some pressure. So just like take a break. Breathe. Know that Pluto square the nodes wants you to kind of clear out the emotional toxicity. And when it hits 27, 28, 29 of Capricorn again, it wants you literally to breathe, to do breath work, to go for walks, to communicate in a different way, to transform the way that you think, to transform the way that you communicate with people. And Pluto is also in opposition to your Mercury. So it's also about not feeling fear, not allowing fear to kind of run things. And then here's Jupiter coming into 29. Okay, so things are gonna feel like this for the better part of like the next couple of months. It'll ebb and flow, but until we get Jupiter into Taurus and until we get, Pluto that's fully in Aquarius, the beginning of next year, between now and let's say August, you're just gonna feel that pressure. And so what I always tell clients is you wanna work with the focal point of the square. Well, there is no focal point of the square because everything is getting hit. So the best advice I can give you is take these dates that I'm about to give you and write them down, okay? Because these are going to be the hot zones. So I'm watching for when Jupiter hits 29, okay? So that's gonna start on May 13th. It'll be for a stretch. So let's just say May 13th until Mars leaves 29 degrees, so May 13th through the 20th, that is a very pressured time because you're having Mars-Pluto squares and Jupiter-Pluto squares. Another time is going to be when Pluto hits 29 degrees again, or when Venus hits 29, so that'll be right around June 4th and 5th. And then Pluto's gonna be hitting 29 degrees in mid-June, and it'll be there for about a month. Things will calm down a little bit. Then we're gonna see the North and the South node hit 29 degrees. That's gonna be the 17th of July. For me, looking at this, it's more like full speed ahead with your career, really pushing into some of the changes with your career and that work. And then the nodes are gonna leave that pivotal 28, 29 degrees. And it's gonna calm down around the first week of August, okay? You might have to like replay this to get those dates, but those are gonna be the hot zones. Pluto will still go back and forth and hit 27, 28, 29 degrees between now and the new year. So you're gonna still be feeling Pluto square the ascendant and the descendant, which is how do I keep the peace with myself and with other people? What are all these toxic emotions coming up? How is it affecting my home life and my private life? And the opposition to Cancer, Mercury in Cancer is really soft and sweet, but when Pluto opposes, people try to bully you or people try to push you into doing things, and like they can almost be super dominant, right? It's like a Saturn energy. Another food for thought is that you do have transit Saturn right now coming into an opposition with your Mars. So that's also saying you're going through a period of going, okay, what's gonna make me happy? What do I wanna do? What do I need? How can I better love myself? And where you're getting pushback, Mars, from friends, Mars in the 11th house. So I kind of feel inclined to tell you, you really want to get this down pat this year. If something that your friends want to do is not going to make you happy or it's not best for you, the answer is no. Learning to take better care of yourself, love yourself, put yourself first is really important, especially with Mars being in Virgo. I feel like there can be some friends that may have some bad habits. They may also be having some lifestyle things that are not ideal for you, that are not contributing to the life or the schedule that you need. I guess that's the best thing that I can put. So it can be friends that are still going out and drinking and partying or smoking, or, they don't have a solid work ethic, or there's something going on there where there's some conflict. And what you might hear from them is they're like, well, you're always busy or you're always at home. Because Saturn is the ruler of your fourth, and they're going to kind of say that you're consumed with things. And I would say, no, I'm just consumed with, really sticking to a routine. And it's not that you're being rigid and you won't do anything out of your routine, but your routine needs to come first. Health, work, and also like mental health related things are really important. These are so many squares to be going on at one time. So just take it easy, and know that, you know what? A lot of this is just really trying to get you to make some big changes when it comes to your home and your private life. Even the node square Pluto isn't necessarily just about home and family changes. Pluto's in Aquarius, so it's going to be about who you let into your home, who you allow to kind of visit, who interacts with you and your family. And you're very, very sensitive and susceptible to people bullying you right now. And I would say the more that you're leaning into the 7th house, this can be taking on partnerships, new relationships, but this can also be an excellent time to meet counselors, therapists, to be booking astrology readings, to be talking to a job or a career coach, other people who can come in to kind of help you work through some of this stuff. So you're not feeling like you're getting hit so hard by, other people telling you, oh, you're doing this wrong. You're learning how to kind of be a little bit better and find more balance in some of your relationships. It'll get easier. It's going to take some time until the end of the summer. So go and learn about the transit Pluto opposed natal Mercury. And I would also go and learn about transit Saturn in opposition to natal Mars. Hopefully that is helpful. Let me see who else I've got. Thank you. Am I pronouncing your name right? Takia? That's a pretty name. Let me make sure. I think that's all my level 3 people. So if I miss anybody, let me know. I think that's everybody. Let me re-upload my PayPal and give you guys the rundown for who I have now. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so we're going to have Jasmine, Maritza, Deanna, Kara, Natalie, Vonnie. Then we're going to have, who is this? Lee, Sage Moon, Claire, Natalie, Rachel, Maham, Lee, MSBG, Elsa, and Raja. Cool. So that's who we've got. Appreciate your patience. I'll call you guys a couple in advance so you know who's coming up next. Thank you guys for your donations. I appreciate it. All right, let's pull up Jasmine. I want to make sure I had the right person here. Let me see if I can find her. There we go. All right, so we've got Jasmine, and I'm going to make this chart equal so it's going to be a little bit easier to see. Here we go. That's better. Okay. So I've got you here, Jasmine, November 4th, 1986, 9:24 a.m. And Jasmine says, hope you're good. Last year's been a lot, but real transformative. Strangely feeling at ease in the midst of the chaos. What would you say to expect from this eclipse moving forward? Anything in particular I should be focusing on? Thank you for your work. Lots of love. Well, thank you. Let's take a look. So, wow, you have a ton of Scorpio. So, obviously, you're kind of used to chaos. You can, I'm not going to say thrive, but you know how to move through it. And yes, you're right. The last couple of years has been a lot because you've had Saturn square all of your Scorpio. So Saturn was actually moving through Aquarius, came into conjunction with Mars, your chart ruler. So lots of challenges in regards to communication and maybe even siblings or moving or contracts or anything like that. The square that you were having to all these personal planets was about combating and working through fear or isolation or anything that you have been afraid to kind of push through. So now you're done. You are good. And you know, this eclipse that's coming through, I mean, it is conjunct Venus for you. And Venus is the ruler of the 7th house. And so this is a south node eclipse. This is also the final eclipse that we're going to have in Scorpio for 9 years. So until we see the north node in Scorpio in about 8 or 9 years, that's when we have the next one. So there's already something kind of like a finale about a lunar eclipse because it's a completion. It's something we've been building towards for 6 months. We've had 2 years of these eclipses, and now here we have one more that's very close to the south node. So there's this flushing out. I'd go as far as saying, being that you have Venus in Scorpio and retrograde, it can be like a karmic clearing. Like there can be some clearings that are going on spiritually or behind the scenes or in your sleep relating to relationships. And so, you know, to be honest with you, I think it's a good thing, because generally when I see charts like this with, you know, Sun, Pluto, Venus, lots of Scorpio elements in the 12th house, we know you can be alone. Okay, we know you know how to do that. Sometimes you prefer that, but it can also kind of create like an invisible wall around you where you keep other people out and maybe you're not aware of it. This is really similar to like a Pisces energy. So for you to have an eclipse that's going to be on your 7th house ruler, I think it's kind of saying it's like the final clearing right before it ushers in new relationship energy. Even if you're not looking for it, that's generally what it will bring. Now, can it bring conclusions and, you know, secrets that are coming out and being exposed? Sure, it could do that too. I'm not going to say concerned, but I think that this eclipse can pack a bit of a punch because it is squaring your natal Mars, which is your chart ruler. So you want to watch for like how you're communicating, blow-ups, be mindful when you're driving, watch for challenges with siblings or neighbors. This eclipse can bring that on. And, you know, Mars being your ruling planet, it can have an impact on the mind or on the communication or on the body. The other thing is like I'm watching, you know, Chiron come in and come into a connection with your North Node. So this can be healing the heart space, healing the inner child, healing any things in regards to Aries related things, headaches, migraines, you know, issues with the blood, sometimes reproductive stuff can kind of come up. And then soon you're going to have Jupiter and also Uranus coming into contact with your descendant. Now it's still in your 6th house, so there's still some health stuff or scheduling stuff getting worked out. But next year, when you have Uranus and the North Node, Uranus and Jupiter coming into contact with your descendant, I do believe it could open the door for relationship stuff. I also think it's going to happen because you're going to see Saturn is going to be trining your Venus. So there's lots of new opportunities for relationship, partnership, business partnerships, clients, type of vibes coming through. But, you know, Venus rules Taurus, so it is very relationship oriented. It is possible that you're meeting somebody that could literally live in another city or be in a foreign place, or, you know, they're foreign to you in some way. So just look at this, you know, series of eclipses that are wrapping up as kind of clearing all of this stuff out. You're probably going to feel like the light turned on right around the time the South Node goes into Libra and the North Node goes into Aries. So that's going to be in July, but then you're coming into your nodal return. So that only happens like every 18 years or so, 18, 19 years, that there's like a hard realignment with your destiny. So if your North Node is in Aries in the 5th house, it means that you're here to really show your own personal talent, to be fearless and courageous, to be active and daring and take chances. It may be that you are more risky when it comes to love. You might get into gambling, you might get into starting your own business. But Mars is the ruler and you have Mars in the 3rd house. So I wonder if you're going to start like an online business. I wonder if you're going to start some kind of creative writing. I wonder if there is going to be a new job that kind of pops in. So know that there's more than just that eclipse that's coming through. It's the eclipse. It's also all of the oppositions in your 6th house, which could be new work, which may allot for you to make more money, to improve your health, and also travel and potentially meet other people. So I'm really interested to see how this happens. Just my goodness, with all the Saturn squares and the Uranus oppositions these last few years, that's really going through it. You've really gone through it. So now you're kind of coming out the other side. And the next 2 years looks like it's going to be a lot of going back and forth with other people and really kind of showing up and being able to showcase some of your own personal talents. So this is the farewell eclipse, I think, for all of the cosmic clearing, and becoming aware of all of the getting in the way, you know, that happens with the 12th house. I mean, the 12th house can be self-undoing or self-sabotaging, and issues pertaining to things that we don't see clearly or that we don't acknowledge. So we're bidding farewell to all of that. It looks like things are going to get a little bit easier after this. But keep in mind, like I said, it's squaring Mars. So I wonder if this is going to prompt you to feel like you need to close the door or cut somebody off or say I'm finished, or there is some kind of conversation that comes up where you have to kind of like definitively, you know, speak your piece and then move on, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay, so we've got Maritza, Deanna, and then Natalie. Let's see, let me open this up. Let's see, I know I saw her. There we go. All right, so we have got here Maritza. Hey Candice, what does this lunar eclipse mean for me? The last 3 years have been a roller coaster. Not sure what I need to be doing at this point. Eclipses from spring 2022 and April 2023 almost took me out mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Date of birth is August 25th, 1984, Bronx, New York, 9:47 p.m. Well, that sounds about right with these eclipses. My goodness, you have been in the path of the eclipses as well, huh? So let's talk about it. We know that eclipses come in pairs, okay? And so I think the question that a lot of people have been asking me recently has been, why have these eclipses been so intense? Well, Aries and Scorpio are both ruled by Mars, and Mars is hot-headed, quick-tempered, cutting, severing, purging, fighting for, in some cases, people are feeling like they're fighting for their life, and having to kind of really duke it out. So we're going to be having 2 eclipses. The first one was a solar eclipse that was in Aries, right on your ascendant, at that pivotal 29 degrees. So yeah, I mean, we can go back and look at the eclipses last year. You were having eclipses that was going to be in Scorpio and Taurus, so they were still affecting you because you have a natal Saturn in Scorpio. And this next eclipse that's coming in is still going to be very close to your natal Saturn. So, you know, whenever I see eclipses in the 1st and the 7th house, I always go, what's going on with relationships, right? Or who or what are you having it out with? Who are you having to kind of clear out? It's not always romantic relationships. Sometimes it can be friends. Sometimes it can be business partners, clients. But you had one that was last month on your ascendant, which was basically giving you a fresh start, and it was initiating you into something new. 29 degrees is a pivotal degree. So we feel like we're at a crisis or at a breaking point. That's really why I think it was so overwhelming. Eclipses or outer planets that hit angles are very intense. And so you have not just that eclipse, but you have the North Node that's getting ready to conjunct your ascendant, and you have Jupiter getting ready to connect to your ascendant. So I'm kind of giving you the green light to be more consumed with how are things affecting me? How does my body feel? What are my needs? What are my goals? Where do I want to go? How am I growing? Because the North Node is trying to get you to focus on your own personal needs here soon. And when Jupiter crosses your ascendant, I do believe you're going to see more sparkles from that eclipse that we had last month. You know, Jupiter rules obviously travel and philosophy if you're an Aries rising. But in your case, Placidus, it also rules your 8th house. So it tells me about how you're embracing and being more positive about what the future holds, even if that means going at it alone. On top of that, you have also got Pluto that is in a square to your ascendant. So it can be feeling like there's challenges with career, bosses, and superiors. And you are in what we call our Pluto square Pluto era. So all of the people in the early 80s have been watching transit Pluto come into square with their natal Pluto. I kind of call this like the like the zombie transit, where things that you thought that were dead and buried can sometimes resurrect and come back, right? Because Pluto's kind of creepy and it does deal with the underworld. So I'm wondering, like, is there stuff resurfacing with old romantic partners? Is there old wounds from the past coming back? Are you realizing that you're repeating certain patterns in relationships? Are you having a hard time breaking free from relationship issues? Is it creating some conflict in your ability to kind of really be front and center and present for your career, right? You've had several months now of the South Node going through your 7th house. And so the last kind of swing that it's going to make here is going to be July, August, when the South Node sits on your Pluto. And I kind of feel inclined to tell you, like, you got to be really careful with who you're taking up with, because Pluto and the South Node together can bring people back that can be toxic. There can be a sense also with Pluto at 29 of breakups or separations that feel like divorce. At least in my experience, I've seen 29 degrees of Libra be an indication of divorce or a feeling of a separation that feels like one. And you've also got Jupiter opposing that in Pluto square, okay? So I'm just gonna be really honest with you. Jupiter moving through your ascendant with the North Node is a wonderful transit that's really helping you align with what's best for you. And it's about being insightful and doing all the work and trying to be optimistic and also like really tapping into your inner knowledge. And you may find yourself in situations where you're standing in front of somebody and you're like, don't you see, like, you just need to do this, this, and this. And like, we're so good together. And like, this could be possible. And Jupiter is going to want to get on its soapbox and preach, but Pluto is not always going to be receptive. So you're going to have some conversations with romantic partners. It's going to be like talking to a wall. And you want to be mindful, like, you're not other people's teacher. If you're in a relationship, you're there to be a partner. Once you're kind of branching into the whole teaching and preaching to them thing and feeling like, you know, you're really desperately trying to save them or teach them, it's not going to work. Pluto will go back into Capricorn. So it's going to come back into a square with your natal Pluto. This is going to go on and off for the next year. But it's only going to be really the most intense for the next couple of months, because we're going to see planets that are going to hit, you know, 27, 28, 29 degrees, and then the nodes. So similar to what I said to Stephanie, anytime planets are hitting those 29 degrees between now and, let's say, mid-August, it's just going to kind of keep coming up. Full moons are about completions. So if you have a lunar eclipse full moon, it's a heavy emotional completion in regards to relationships, coming into conjunction with your natal Saturn, which is highlighting the heaviness of relationships just in general that you have. Obviously, there's some relationship karma that you're working through in this lifetime, but I also see like Chiron opposed Mars and Uranus, and there's a sense of kind of feeling the pain of separation from other people, and like where other people kind of come or go, or maybe don't always help you feel connected or safe or secure. So that's a wound you're working through as well. My advice is lean into the positivity of the nodal transit and also the Jupiter transit, because once Jupiter dips into Taurus next month, it's immediately going to start trining your Sun and your Mercury, where it can help you start making the physical changes necessary to focus more on your own happiness and joy. In the midst of all of this, you've got Saturn in opposition right now as well to your Sun and your Mercury. And when Saturn's in the 11th house, especially when it's making oppositions or squares, I look at this and I go, I'm not going to say you don't need a relationship, but what you really may benefit from is like having good friends, right? When Saturn is in opposition to your Sun or to Mercury, you're feeling like everything is out of reach. And I would say the more that you're actively participating in groups and networks and connecting to other people, those other people can be your saving grace. And they can kind of help you get out of some of the drama that's going on in relationships right now. Equally, Saturn is going to teach you how to work with groups. Saturn rules your career. So there's going to be a focus in like working and collaborating with other people. If you're looking more for like positive relationship transits, you're going to have to see a lot of support to your 7th house Lord. That's going to be more next year when you see Jupiter and Uranus hit 22 degrees and they start coming into a trine with your Venus. So things will be easier, like spring of 2024 when these two outer planets trine your Venus. But at the same time, Saturn will oppose. So it means that you're going to do the best where you're not as attached in relationships to a particular outcome, and that you're learning not to be too self-sacrificial in relationships. Obviously, Venus in the 6th house is another indication of having issues in partnerships, especially with people that you sacrifice things for, or people that you may work with. This is where like getting a full-blown reading and really looking at it, like when I sit down with a client, I'll look at their transits, I look at their progressions, I look at their annual perfections, and I show all of that to them, and then I kind of lay it out there and go, here's the reoccurring pattern. I can tell you pretty confidently that, you know, a Jupiter-Uranus trine to your Venus, you're going to see more pop up next year. But you have to take into consideration long-term, right? You've got Saturn and Pluto that are in your 7th house. Now, that can mean you've already burned one of your relationships and you've already gone through a divorce, or you lived with somebody, or you were engaged and that ended. And then it would take you to your 9th house, which would be your quote-unquote second relationship or your second significant one. That would even more increase the odds with this trine next year that a more prominent relationship may pop up. But, you know, just in general, you're going to see for the next couple of years, Pluto's still squaring Pluto. So it's about kind of learning not to let other people run the show and dominate you to the point where you're not showing up the way that you really feel like you need to be showing up for your career or having authority over your own life, and not letting other people kind of rock the boat. Watch for healing a lot of this relationship stuff and clearing this stuff up over the summer. You will have Venus, which is your 7th house Lord, go retrograde in your 5th. So could you meet somebody June, July, August of 2023? Yeah. Be mindful of people that come back. Not everybody's meant to stay. It can be about getting some kind of closure. And that's probably the best window before next year, right? If that helps. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, so we've got Deanna, Natalie, and then Vonnie. Recently divorced, second relationship took you out. Okay. I'm sorry to hear that, but you know what? It was in the skies, boo-boo. It was in the skies. Very rarely do I see Pluto or Saturn at 29 and they don't get divorced. I almost always see that, and I can see that in progressions as well. Sending you lots of love. Good luck. We've got, let's see. Let's see. Did I plug you in here? I know I did. Change your name here. There we go. There we go. Okay. Mercury retrograde in full effect. Not spelling people's names correctly. I've got Deanna, 7/31/89 at 4:26 a.m. in Van Nuys. All right, so do you have a particular question for me, my dear? Let's see, did you pop in here earlier? I think you might have. Yes. Reading on a romantic relationship. I'm in a relationship that's been rocky to say the least, and I want to know if there's better days ahead. I've got you. Okay, so rocky relationship stuff. So we've got Saturn that rules your 7th house of relationships, Capricorn. Saturn is in your 9th house, coming into an opposition with Venus in the 3rd house. So to me, you guys having communication issues? I mean, issues like with consistency. Do you feel like somebody's not opening up or not following through? Venus in the 3rd can also talk about options or other people. And you do have Venus that is in Virgo, so that's a difficult placement to have because Venus is in a mercurial sign, so it's debilitated. In my opinion, Venus at 8 degrees can also talk about like secrets, and not that there's anybody who's doing anything wrong, but secrets and not coming forward with past relationship issues, hang-ups, fears in regards to relationships, that kind of stuff. So, you know, Saturn oppositions, right? It kind of feels like there's two people standing in a room and they're both like holding their hands out or like crossing their arms and they're like keeping distance from one another. Saturn's going to go all the way up to about 7 degrees this year, and then it's going to retrograde. So you're going to feel the separateness or the distance probably until about August. Then what's going to happen is you're going to have a Venus retrograde and a Mercury retrograde, which will go over your Venus. So to me, it seems like maybe perhaps you're going to give this until about August-ish. And then if something's not working, or let's say you get to a point where you're like, this is too much for me, I don't want to deal with this anymore, you may take some space and then you may use that August period to kind of reconnect. But all year long, Saturn in opposition to your Venus is going to be highlighting like, where are you not getting the love that you need, right? Because Venus in this sign is very connected to communication. And I feel like if you have Venus in the 3rd house, one of your love languages is going to be, you know, telling somebody how you feel, or words of affirmation or acts of service. So there can be this feeling of like somebody not allowing you to do those things and you get kind of agitated. As a Leo also, you know, like Pluto going into Aquarius does have an effect on you. I know for the last number of years, Pluto's been in your 7th house of relationships, so it does bring up the heavy lifting and the changes that happen in relationships, but now it's even more personal because Pluto's coming into an opposition with your sun. Can things get better? Yeah, they can. I mean, I would say that, you know, I'm not saying this to, you know, throw you for a loop, but it's like there can be a sense of having this feeling where there's some distance all year. I will tell you that the 2 time periods where I feel like there could be the most change is definitely going to be that July, August, when these retrogrades are setting up. Opportunities for kind of sitting down, having a conversation, chatting about it, seeing if you can work it out. And then also when you have a Mercury retrograde that's going to start in mid-December in Capricorn, it's going to go into Sag. And when Mercury retrogrades over your natal Saturn, which will be right around like mid-December, that can be like the point where if it's not working, you'll be like, okay, we're done here, right? And some astrologers, you'll hear them say with Pluto going back into Aquarius, like, oh, if a relationship's not working, like, you know, then you'll know. It really does also come down to their own natal astrology. I mean, another transit that I'm looking at is also the fact that Mars is about to go into the sign of Leo. And Mars can be about cutting or severing something. And Mars is about to oppose Pluto, and it's going to square Jupiter. So you want to watch yourself the last 10 days or so of May, because there can be a sense of you just being like more like, I just want to, you know, deal with this now. I want to talk about this now. I want to handle the situation. And you may have somebody who's just like not game to do that. You know, part of your archetypal themes in your astrology, just looking at your Saturn placements in opposition to Jupiter and Chiron and also the moon, do you feel like there's some like residual issues here revolving around like a relationship that you had with like a parent or like a mother figure, or like, you know, feeling like when you needed support or you needed attention, you didn't always get it how you needed it, or that somebody kind of kept you at a distance? Like, can you kind of give me some feedback on that? A lot of the people born in 88, 89, even going into 90 who have Chiron in Cancer, they have wounds revolving around a parent. Okay, so for some people it's mom, for some people it's dad, but having that opposition to all of these planets tell me that there is a sense of you being like, let me fix it, because there's this fear that somebody's going to go away. And I think a lot of the lessons that are going to come up just throughout your life, but also throughout some of these transits with the eclipses these next few years, is realizing that you can't like sacrifice yourself trying to fix other people. You can't also fix everything because there may be things that's issues with them that they have to work through that has nothing to do with you. Okay, so I'm reading, yes, your father figure. Okay, yeah, definitely a fixer in your relationships. And one of the lessons here, I think, with, you know, Saturn in your 6th house is that, you know, you may have partners that have stress or concerns or issues revolving around their own health, their own habits, their own working situations, right? Because Saturn rules the 7th house, that they may not necessarily kind of share with you. So you might feel like sometimes relationships withdraw at certain points in time and they don't kind of tell you what you need. Now, I believe, because I'm a big follower of like evolutionary astrology, I feel like we choose the chart that we want. We come into the incarnation that we want. So when I look at your sun and moon in the 1st house, you came in being like, I want to learn a lot about myself in this lifetime. And like, I want to be able to express myself. And I want to be able to have some sense of like authority. And like, it's very action packed having the sun and the moon in their ruling signs in your 1st house. So you are complete within yourself. Relationships are great, but I can tell that with that in your 1st house and then your sun, Queen Conks, Saturn, you will bring in certain relationships that are meant to give you some space or some independence or what have you. And you may look at it as they've got problems, they're not ready, or they're working too much and I can't see them all the time, or they're telling me it's not the right timing and so now I'm waiting. When in reality, this inconjunct is meant to give you the time and the space to really kind of fill your own cup. And you'll learn that relationships only work when other people have worked through their own issues. Having Saturn, Neptune, Uranus in the 6th can create, you know, inconsistent working situations for you or digestional issues. You know, maybe you have food sensitivities or you have, you know, certain health ailments. But it's kind of like having those placements in the 12th house for your partner. So when things get challenging, they just kind of shut down or they kind of cut people off, right? Look for those times, like I said, July going into August. And then again, you'll see this again in mid-December as kind of turning points for changes in relationships. Strong Saturn aspects are going to enhance your relationships or transits to Saturn. So one thing that you got working in your favor is you're going to see Jupiter trine Saturn. It's going to bring you more opportunities for support with your friends. You're going to have opportunity to go and socialize and do more. So that might kind of give you like a little bit of like a pivot from focusing so much on relationships. You've also got Saturn sextile all of your Capricorn placements all year long. But the truth is like Saturn going into your 9th house, from my perspective, makes me feel like you're more inclined to be like, I want partners who want commitment. I want to get married. Like I want to talk about the next phase in my life, because the 5th house is falling in love, the 7th house is commitment, the 9th house is like ceremonies or the bigger picture of the life that you create together. So it looks like you're more interested in partners who may be ready for those things, or they're ready to live together, or they're ready to talk about home or family potential in the future. And with Venus being the ruler of your 4th house and Saturn in the opposition, there's going to be some people saying, well, I don't want to move in together, or I'm not ready, or I don't know if I see myself getting married. And I would look at this and kind of be like, okay, that's really going to weed things out. And equally, if you're in a relationship with somebody who can't communicate very well, and you say to them, hey, is something going on? Do you want to talk about it? Like, can you open up? And they're still not communicating very well. You're going to learn all year long that it's not necessarily going to be the best relationship for you if somebody can't at least let you know what's going on, right? So hopefully you don't like take the distance personally, recognize that it's coming up just to show where you have certain non-negotiables in relationships. And there is a possibility that things could shift very significantly, especially because you have so many planets in Leo. So during that Venus retrograde, there can be a huge shift. But I think of like July, August, and September is like your glow up period, where that Venus retrograde over your South Node is like more self-esteem, building on yourself, making yourself feel more secure, not feeling like you need to have a partner, and really filling your own cup. And like it may have this weird reverse reaction where it sets things in motion, you know, for the fall into the new year, that's bringing in partners who are more capable and like more on your level, you know. Having really, really, really high standards, low expectations is the key when you have transit Saturn in opposition to Venus. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Good luck with that situation. Sending you good vibes. I've got Natalie, Vonnie, and then I am going to have, let's see, Lee. All right, so let me pull up Natalie. Okay, so Natalie asked a couple questions. So she says, I need a date to launch health products and also Sinistry. Okay, so let's look at the health products first. September 18th, 1988, 5:30 p.m. in Australia. I know you sent me some notes here, so let me read this. With my launch, it's something I've already been selling, but I only posted in my Facebook group, and that's quite large, about the silver. I'm wondering when I should post-launch the gold. Plus, I have a tooth powder, and you don't have a website. I make quite a bit for my local community. I want to do events and market stalls soon. Okay, so let's see. So launching products. So products and marketplace is Mercury. Mercury is retrograde right now, so it looks like there's a lot of reassessing. What do I want to charge? What do I physically have in stock? Do you feel like you've been going through your stock and trying to figure out, like, what do I have excess of? What's costing me more? How do I change the prices of some things? You know, how do I change the packaging of some things? Is there anything like that going on? Because it's all happening in your second house. Once you've figured out what needs to go on sale and what you have a surplus of and what has been redesigned or reworked or packaged, you can use the Mercury retrograde to actually start working on things. Now, for a Pisces rising, it's supposed to be your whole sign third house. So it would be like getting a website in order, working on social media posts, getting ready to post something, you know, working on like a campaign. You can do all of this now. You can work on all of this. But I would recommend launching it after Mercury has gone direct. I also think that this is about comparing different prices and like maybe like models for websites and like what different websites will cost, or what different websites are going to charge you to have like an online store, right? There's something like that that could possibly be coming up as well. Rework your packaging to be more luxe. Great. So I'm thinking like when Mercury goes direct, and right around the time a planet goes direct, it's very potent. So I'm kind of digging like right after the new moon, when the moon is coming. There we go. We could do while the moon is in Taurus. So you could literally launch something, you know, on the 19th of May, if you want to do that. If you're ready to hit it and you've got something that you're ready to launch, then you could do it then. Another option is going to be when the moon comes into conjunction with your natal Jupiter, and it's going to be sextiling Venus, and it's going to be sextiling Mars. Now, the only thing I would say about the 20th, even though those are some decent aspects, is that the moon, even in its new phase, is going to square Saturn. So there could be some visibility issues. So that's not my first choice. My first choice would be do it while the moon is in Taurus. My second choice would be something like when maybe you see the moon go into Cancer and start sextiling your natal Mercury. And we have got Venus that's coming into a sextile with your descendant. So May 22nd. Is another decent day that you could launch something. And then another time would be when the moon is in Virgo, coming into a trine with your natal Mercury right around May 27th. Right in my time, I'm going to assume you're in Australia, so it's my evening, so I think that's going to be your morning. And that's going to be when the moon is in your 7th house, whole sign, trine Mercury, and the sun is conjunct Jupiter. Those are the 3 times in this next month that would be good to like launch things. And you could use any which one of them. So if you know that a website's not ready yet, but you have a post ready, you can use that. and maybe be working towards the end of the month when you have like a website up and ready to go. I love, like, that's usually when I'll make some changes in my website. Like, I'll make website changes and stuff during retrogrades. So don't be afraid of doing all this work during the retrograde if need be. And then it looked like you also had questions about synastry. So let me plug that in for you as well. So it's March 10th, 1990. And that was, what time? 8:30 a.m. There we go. And then this is for the connection that you have with another person. When could there be a relationship? Okay, so you've got this other person who's got Sun in Pisces on your ascendant. So that's great off the bat, because there is a sense of having this attraction where you're bringing this other person in. You've got a South Node Venus connection, so there is a sense of having some mutual attraction and like kind of the past meeting in the future. Oh, hold on a second. Is that not the right date? Oh, so it's backwards because you're in Australia. Okay, so it's 10/3. Okay, thank you. we do it differently here in the States. It's okay. So October 3rd, 1990. There we go. There we go. Okay, so he's got a Pisces moon, Libra sun. Is that correct? Yeah. No worries. So he's got a Pisces moon on your ascendant, so that's still great for emotional connection. You guys have a Mars-Jupiter connection, so lots of chit-chat, feeling excited to communicate and connect and maybe even go places with each other. We've got a Sun-Mercury connection, so that's really interesting because that's really great for talking about relationships. And then you've got Sun and Venus in the 7th house. Still, South Node Venus conjunction, Venus-Jupiter conjunction. You know, one thing that I would say, being a Pisces rising, is that, you know, you've got Saturn that's in your whole sign first house. It's not conjunct your ascendant yet, and one thing you want to keep in the back of your mind is that next year, as Saturn is coming into Pisces, it's gonna, or further into Pisces, it's gonna hit, I think, about like 18 degrees before it retrogrades. So there can be this feeling all the way up until next year that you're like, okay, like at what point do I start kind of saying to myself, I need to focus more on myself, or I need to have better boundaries, or how's the relationship with myself versus other people? Off the bat, your guys' synastry is like awesome. I love the fact that the 7th house Lord is conjunct your sun. I love that Sun and Venus in the 7th house, which is great for partnerships. I love the moon on your ascendant. I like the Mars-Venus opposition because there's like a lot of chemistry and like a lot of push and pull there. You know, you were born with the stellium of placements in Capricorn in a square to your Mars. Bringing this person into your life, they have Sun and Venus that's also going to square. So, you know, I don't know what you've noticed about him, but having, you know, the Saturn, Neptune, Uranus square his sun, there can be questions revolving around relationships and responsibility and taking the lead. But your guys' synastry is really great. I wonder when you have Venus go retrograde over your natal Jupiter and over your natal Venus, over his natal Jupiter and over your natal Venus, is that a time where there is more, you know, acknowledging, falling in love, talking about how you're feeling about one another, really opening up about relationships, especially because it's going to sextile his personal planets in Libra? When I flip this around, obviously he's got a Sag rising. It puts your Jupiter on his descendant, which is really great for commitment in relationships. And it puts your North Node conjunct his moon, which can be about home and family. you know, Mars in his 5th house where there's eclipses going on and the North Node is moving in there is setting him up, just being a Sag rising, to fall in love with someone or something. Some Sagittariuses are going to meet the love of their life, or they're going to start saying I love you, or they're going to, you know, commit to somebody more seriously. Others are going to start having children. So with Jupiter still being, you know, in his 5th house and eclipses being in his 5th house, be mindful that kids can kind of show up. I wonder if next year when Saturn hits his moon in your North Node, if you kind of say like, okay, I'm to a point where I really want to build a relationship where I'm living with somebody, or there is some kind of cement commitment when it comes to the home or the domestic zone. Now, relationships for him, oh, you have a kid, okay. So if you guys haven't already done that, then that needs to happen. If you guys already have a kid and you live together, then it's going to be talking about how you guys are committing to each other even more. So it can be finding a long-term place to talk about living, right? That could happen. Have been splitting up for 2 years, trying to stop fighting and triggering each other. Well, he's got Mars in his 7th house, and your Jupiter is right on top of his Mars. So you guys are going to either debate, or you're going to fight, or you're going to sleep together. It's going to be one of the three. You highlight that. Here's the issue that I see in his astrology. The last several months or so, there's been a Mars retrograde that was happening since last fall in the 7th house. So there was like a back and forth going on, and I feel still really the determination is going to be sometime, I think, between about September and March, where you're really adamant about what your needs are when it comes to your home and your family. So if you guys make a decision, okay, you know, we need to make this work, and to make it work, we need to be a family, we need to live together, that's likely going to be the time that it's going to happen. This is also South Node stuff. So when you have Venus conjunct the South Node, at first it's really alluring and it's really charming and you really want that connection and it feels like familiar, but then you get stuck into the South Node pattern, and South Noded Leo is drama. It is drama and issues revolving sometimes around children. I do think maybe like with your Jupiter return next year and Jupiter going into the 12th house, into his 7th house, it is possible he would consider giving this another try. But I would be looking at more spring of next year. Once you have Saturn hit his moon, once you have eclipses in the 5th, and once you have Jupiter go into his 7th, from, you know, March all the way through about June of next year is going to be better timing for the two of you. And his relationships is Mercury. So right now he's got transit Neptune in opposition to his Mercury, which means he's looking at things going like, okay, you know, I've got a kid, but I've also got somebody who wants to have a relationship. And a lot of it's going to be about learning how to define the relationship outside of just the responsibilities with the kid. It's not we should be together because we have a kid. It's, okay, we happen to have a child together, but also we have had a relationship. We have history. Can we mend that? So he's not feeling like he's obligated to be in a relationship because of the kid, because Neptune can come in and make him feel like, oh, I'm making a sacrifice, you know, for dating or love because of a child. And you want him to be in the relationship for the right reasons, not because he feels like he has to because of some obligation that he has to, you know, being a parent. To be honest with you, you don't want to corral him with that energy. You want to let him come in on his own. And I think a lot of this is going to be learning about how to bring the fun back, right? Eclipses in the 5th house. I would say like taking, you know, him to like a sporting event with Aries in the 5th house, like going and watching like a boxing match or a fight, or going and doing things that are active and exciting can reignite that connection between the two of you guys. And it doesn't just have to be about being parents. Obviously that's important, but if you guys are going to be together, you guys want to make sure that that chemistry is still there, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you. That's some tricky stuff, but his astrology with yours is really great, but I look at yours and like you kind of trigger him. It's not your fault, but you kind of trigger him a little bit. And with your North Node on the moon, I think that it's important to maybe, if you guys do ease back into kind of seeing each other again, trying to create like a schedule where you can spend time with each other domestically and start kind of creating that kind of, you know, that routine at home. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so I've got Vonnie. And after Vonnie, I have Lee. And then we'll take a break, and I have Sage through a whole bunch of other people. So I'm going to keep it moving. Thank you guys for your patience. Let me find Vonnie. Okay, so Vonnie says 3/31/1990, 6:30 p.m. in Birmingham. Hey Candace, my life is currently in shambles. I was looking to see if you can give me some insight as what I can expect with this eclipse. Stuff is hitting degrees of my 2nd and 8th house, squaring my north node in the 4th. I'm in the middle of moving. My car was repossessed, leaving me stranded in Ohio. I need to get back to my other belongings in PA. Money is very tight. I have a court hearing earlier this week involving some money that was stolen over a year ago from me. I need some money to pay movers. Things are not good. So just hoping you can take a look at where things are headed for me. I just want to know if everything will be okay in the end. I have never had this much of a hard time with moving before. I can normally handle such serious, heavy pressure, but not this much. All right, let's take a look. Just one question per person, unless you want to pay for a second question. The only reason why I did that is because somebody else added that on, but let me know. Okay. So a couple things. You know, part of what's kind of going on right now is that you have obviously Mercury retrograde going in and out of your 8th house. So it does this will kind of apply to your question about products. With anything across the board right now, whether it's stuff you want to sell, whether it's money that people owe you, whether it's money that you have to pay movers, all that stuff. This is all Mercury retrograde in your 8th house, whole sign. So it's about what other people owe you, are things coming back to you. Mercury for Libra rising chart rules your 12th house and your 9th house. So anxiety, stress, worry about, making sure everything's going to work out okay, making sure that you're going to be able to kind of get everything in order. And also the 9th house Mercury connection, which is about a moving further away. So believe it or not, even though the retrograde's in the 8th of what other people owe you and what you owe other people, all of this is getting worked out, so you have less stress and more of a smoother transition moving to another place, okay? So it makes perfect sense. When I look at this, it's also stressful because this retrograde is in opposition to your Pluto, which is the money you possess. So that's why there is this reworking, rethinking, or, having to go to court or dealing with, what people owe you. So you can bring the resources in that you need to pay your bills. So until Pluto leaves, or until Mercury leaves that degree, which will be in the next couple weeks, this still might shake out a little bit. And you happen to have planets that are also within 14 to 24 degrees of the fixed signs. So when you look at the Mercury retrograde, it's squaring your nodes, which is trying to resolve something with accounts and money owed. So you can move or change house. It's also trying to help shake out any issues you have revolving around whether or not you have control of your finances. This is partially because Uranus has been in opposition there, but now it's moving forward, so it's done with the opposition. And you're seeing now Uranus is coming into a square with Venus, which is your chart ruler. And that's the other reason why you're feeling kind of like the pressure. You're 33 this year. So part of what's going on also is you're now in a 9th house year, which is a year that is highlighting the 9th house per annual perfection. So you'll be in that 9th house year until March of 2024. That means when planets go through your 9th house, things get activated, or when your 9th house lord is on the move or making aspects or retrograding, things also happen. So for example, when we had the Sun conjunct Mercury right around the 30th, there should have been something coming to light in terms of things changing in regards to your financial situation. When we have when we have Mercury go direct, which is going to be around the 15th, things might get a little bit easier. And you're also going to see that when Mercury comes into conjunction with Uranus, you make it a judgment in regards to what's owed to you. Now, I say that because Mercury is going to conjunct Uranus at 20 degrees. That's about money owed. So this is the beginning of June. And you're also going to see Jupiter move into Taurus, which is your 8th house whole sign. I mean, honestly, it looks like things will get easier. It looks like if needs to be corrected, if something needs to be returned, you know, you're going to get some kind of blessing. The 8th house is loans, inheritances, death, anything in regards to stuff that has been overdue for some time. And Jupiter rules your 3rd house. So this looks like you're also going to get your car back. So you'll have the financial means to be able to get your car back. And you may see that even more when the sun gets into your 9th house and it's coming into a trine with Mars and Venus. So yes, I do think things are going to get better, but there's like a little bit of like having to deal with all the other bullshit and waiting until you find out this determination and maybe even have other resources kind of come in. For all Libra risings, it's going to be a better year because you're going to find that there's going to be some kind of cosmic support. Another time to watch is also going to be when the transit sun comes into contact with your moon. And that's going to be like hitting restart. And then obviously you want to look at the other Mercury retrograde. So there's going to be a Mercury retrograde that's going to be end of, you know, August or sometime in September. We're going to have another Mercury retrograde that's going to be in mid-December. That's going to start in Capricorn and go into Sagittarius. Those will be other hot zones. And then there's going to be a retrograde right around your birthday next year. That's going to be more about relationships. I feel inclined to kind of tell you, you've been through worse. As much as I hate to say that, like I look at the transits that were going on when Uranus was opposed Pluto and Saturn was squaring in the fall of last year, and that is worse. Not that not having your car and dealing with all this stuff isn't, but like that's a hot ass mess. And that's coming from somebody who had some of the same transits. So I understand how that feels. All of those squares was just creating a lot of tension, you know, pretty much July all the way through October. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So, you know, I think Jupiter and Uranus coming into your 8th house is like, you might get a breakthrough and get some extra cash. You might have somebody that loans you money. You might finally have something that comes through and out of the blue, something just kind of arrives. You may find out with Jupiter going into your 8th house that your car is like really valuable and you get your Jeep back, but you might decide, hey, it's time for me to kind of like, you know, do something newer or do something bigger. Or you're going to put that money into like moving. It depends. But sometimes when the 3rd house lord goes in the 8th, you change your vehicle. So yeah, things should get a little bit easier. Also, you know, in your natal chart right now, you've got the eclipse getting reactivated in the 7th. So that means that you're getting ready to have new potential relationships come in and support from other people. So, you know, counselors, therapists, astrologers, you know, motivational coaches, job coaches, all kinds of people are going to start showing up to help you. And part of the 7th house is learning just to ask for guidance or asking for people to help. And then the 8th house is the changes and the transformations that come from those conversations that you have with other people or other people wanting to invest time or energy or resources into you. So yeah. Things are going to get easier. No more Uranus in opposition to Pluto. No more Uranus toward Mars. The only thing that you really want to watch out for is that you are going to see, you know, over the next 2 years, Uranus is going to start squaring Venus. And next year, when Jupiter and Uranus come together, they're going to start squaring your Venus. So it's going to be high adventure next, you know, spring going into summer, like May, June, July. You might want to start studying that because you're going to have your 3rd house lord and your 5th house lord come into a square with Venus. And what's probably going to happen there is like you might start learning more about investments, and maybe you've taken money that you've saved and invested and it might pay off pretty significantly. It might mean that you get involved in a very lucrative business relationship, or you start bringing in a lot more money, or you end up meeting somebody who's just very financially secure and they want to merge resources with you. This could also be an unexpected pregnancy, because Jupiter and Uranus coming together, squaring Venus, which rules the body, can be about, unexpectedly having a kid, or just having your own business and suddenly there's a lot more money that comes in. So be very careful with that Jupiter Uranus square Venus, because it's likely either going to be that there is an unexpected romantic partnership that takes you by surprise and you're like, no, or it is the potential for being a parent. So you've been warned. But yeah, things have been worse, to be honest with you. This is just probably the eclipses where for Libra risings, there's very sudden, unexpected expenses coming through. And that is the eclipse that's happening tomorrow. And all the energy of the planets in the 8th house is like what you have to pay. So a lot of that stuff's getting rearranged right now. So when you get out of the retrograde and Mercury comes into conjunction with Uranus, if you're in a mercurial year, boy, oh boy, that is going to be a time to watch. So right around June the 4th is like when something is definitely going to shift. And I'm curious to see what the determination is, because it's gonna play in your favor. Might take a little bit to get somebody to kind of pay out, though, with Venus in opposition to Pluto, but something's gonna shift. Hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, I'm Libra rising too. It's been kind of crazy. Libras and Aries have been the ones really getting hit hard with these eclipses, because they're all financial for us, you know. Okay, so I have got a whole list of people now that came in during the live, so I got to put these charts in. It shouldn't take me as long as it normally does, so just a heads up. So this is who I have coming up next. So I have Lee, Sage Moon, Claire, Rachel, Maham, Lee, MSBG, Elsa, and Raya. So give me just a minute, guys, so I can plug some of these in for you. You can grab a snack or something to drink while I put this in. And let me know what I'm curious to hear what you guys are doing for anybody doing anything fun for the eclipse? Getting on a plane when I shouldn't. Katie, that was it, where was it? Was it Long Beach? I can't remember. I could have sworn it's somewhere in California for Sage Moon. January 9th, 73. Santa Monica. Okay, thank you. 10:28 a.m. March 16th, 75. $11:27 p.m. Let's see. Pull up Rachel's info. Five, 4, 8, 4. Okay, let's see. October 23rd, 63. (8:30 p.m.) Let's see. To New Jersey. December 2nd, 8:30 p.m. Virginia. December 25th, 75. $5:15 a.m. Okay, I think I got almost everyone. Sorry guys, it took a minute. Also tequila, I second that. This eclipse should be sponsored by just tequila in general. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, let's make sure that this is right. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna have Lee, and then we're gonna have Katie, and then we're gonna have Claire, and then we're gonna have Rachel. Should go a little bit smoother now that we have these in here. All right, so let's start first with Lee. I've got you here July 30th, 1960 at 9:50 p.m. A Pisces rising, sun in Leo, and a moon in Scorpio. Okay, so Lee says, my question is regarding finances. I've been in hermit mode for several months working on healing, investments, and writing. Tell me what you see for my finances. Okay, cool. So for you, just food for thought. You're coming out of a period where you've had South Node transits and eclipses through your 8th house. So there has been this sense of like clearing out old debts or karmic entanglements, focusing on becoming more financially sound and independent. You know, recently, these last few hours, you've had the moon South Node conjunction taking place. So there is a sense of kind of finally clearing out, releasing, letting go of things, paying off things, clearing out old debt, or emotional healing. The money that you possess is more so your 2nd house. So Jupiter's going into your 2nd house soon. That happens once every 12 years. It does enhance and bring more resources and abundance. You will see that play really into next year. And I want you to pay attention right when Jupiter is in the late degrees of Taurus, because it's going to hit your Mars. Jupiter is your traditional chart ruler. And it looks like you're going to bring more money in and you're going to reinvest it. So it looks like you're kind of making money to build, and then you're setting some aside and you're going to keep reinvesting it and building it. The other thing is that you're in the midst of a Mercury retrograde right now. So there has been a sense of like reevaluating, where's my money? What am I spending it on? What is my budget? What do I actually need? What can I let go of? And really trying to kind of tighten up your finances. And even if money has come in, I think it's learning not to spend it. It's being more focused on paying things off, investing, or saving it. And there's also lots of psychological effects of this because you have so many placements connecting to Scorpio in your 8th house that this does have a psychological effect on you. Traditionally, Mars in the 2nd likes to spend, and I think you've been learning the ways to start kind of focusing on saving and paying things off. Now, other transits that are going to likely bring more abundance will be just after this new moon, actually. So there's a new moon that we're going to have right around 28 degrees, and it's going to be right on your Mars in the sign of Taurus. So this will be on the 19th of May. I recommend setting some time aside for this particular new moon to do some money and abundance manifestation. Like get a couple crystals associated with abundance, or maybe some herbs, maybe light a candle, write all your intentions, and like set some money aside somewhere to like energetically let it multiply. Like put it somewhere like on an altar space and like, you know, put a couple things there to, you know, be able to kind of bring in more abundance, and then leave it alone. Don't touch it. What you'll see probably as this comes into the full moon that you're going to have in Sagittarius is that could be a period of time where you're bringing in more resources, or there is more, you know, financial growth. So that'll probably be right around June the 3rd. Then we're going to see Jupiter come into your Placidus 2nd house, and it's going to be there for the entire next year. What's interesting is that'll bring you more money, but it's going to oppose your moon and your Neptune. So there can be a sense of being like, do I put it into family? Do I help a kid out? Do I start another business? Do I buy a property? Like, be careful with investing in things or buying things that you may not know about, because I could see that coming up, especially because it's going to come into a square with your sun. Another time where I could see finances also growing is going to be right around the time that You have a Venus retrograde in your 6th. This might be making some changes in regards to your financial habits or bringing somebody in to kind of help you learn how to grow your money. So this can be a wealth manager, or this could be somebody who's like teaching you how to reinvest this. And that's going to be making squares. Be very careful, once again, starting businesses, launching things, doing things that you don't have experience in over the summer. And then you're going to have a eclipse that's going to be in Taurus around the end of October of 2023 on the 28th. That'll be a lunar eclipse full moon completion with Jupiter and the moon, with the moon in its exaltation in your 2nd house. This may be another payout period. I wonder if you're experimenting with being like, do I take money and put it into like high yield accounts, or do I buy bonds, or, you know, like looking at other ways to diversify. And if you have some extra cash, where you can put it so it can continue to grow, and then you cash out on something right at the end of October. Long-term wise, I mean, you know, because Venus has connections to your 2nd house, Venus transits, good or bad, do significantly affect your resources. So over the last 2 years, you've had Saturn in opposition to Venus, and you've also had Saturn that's been in opposition to Uranus. Looks like there was like a lot of emotional healing, needing to be alone. So maybe there's going to be this feeling of trying to get back into the swing of your finances, or maybe even working again July, August, and September when Venus goes retrograde. When Venus goes retrograde over your natal Venus, especially if you're trying to start a new business or if you're trying to start a new job, be very mindful that it doesn't necessarily mean that something is going to stick. So be cautious with some of the aspects that are going to be going on over the summer, because it's going to go retrograde over your 2nd house Lord, and it's going to square. Especially if you're like, oh, I'm going to start a new business, or I'm going to, you know, like rent an office space or something. Like just be a little cautious, because there can be some things that can kind of go awry here. But, you know, you're not experiencing Saturn in opposition to your Venus. You're finally going to see Uranus come out of a square with your Venus. So I don't really think you're going to have some of the hangups that you have had in recent years. The Jupiter square Venus can bring more money, but also more work, and the need to like bring in other people to help you manage the money that you're making. Or if you're trying to start another business, it'll be like you needing to get an assistant, or you needing to get a space to work from, or needing to pay more money into the business that you have kind of set up. And then next year when Jupiter hits your Mars in like May, June of 2024, that's also going to be like a nice payout period. So yeah, I do see finances getting better. From a whole sign perspective, you know, be mindful that the Aries and Libra eclipses that are coming in are going to also be financial. So you might see a sense of like needing to bring in more resources, or people paying you in mid-October, which makes sense when you have that full moon lunar eclipse around the end of October in your 2nd house. But if you listen to the Pisces rising horoscope, both Aries and Libra are going to be bringing up and producing something in regards to money that you make that you're bringing in, and the money that you have to pay. So sometimes you're making more money and you pay more in taxes, especially if you're getting into like investments and stuff. So just make sure that you're keeping that all kind of organized and you're aware of what you're having to kind of pay back tax-wise. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Let's see. So let's pull up Katie. Haley, you're a couple people away. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people ahead of you. Hi, you are, my dear. I'm sorry. We closed it almost like 40 minutes ago, but I'll be back next week. So we've got Katie here, January 973 at 10:28 a.m. Katie says, what's going on with my relationships? I feel like I'm being tested right now on both love and career. When is one going to get good or the other? Is something going to happen to me after this eclipse? Please tell me what to look out for. The Neptune on my ascendant has me questioning everything and not know who or what to believe. Thank you. You're welcome. That's a tricky transit with Neptune on the ascendant for sure. Okay, so you know that when planets cross an angle, just because of the way that, you know, angles and geometry works, it's going to create a square to the other angles in your chart, okay? So if you have an outer planet sitting on one of these areas, it's going to affect the whole chart. And so Neptune can create a sense of distortion. It can dissolve things, it can make things go missing, it can create issues with dishonesty, it can provide you with the opportunity to have emotional or spiritual breakthroughs, divine inspiration. It just depends. It helps that you have Neptune in its ruling sign, okay? So the fact that you have the ruling sign moving over your ascendant, yeah, you want to watch with issues with not seeing clearly, but also it's encouraging you to tap into your inner intuition, your inner visions, meditation, dreams, stuff like that. The reason why I think it's really challenging is because it's coming into a square with your natal Venus. So there can be lots of like misunderstandings or misconceptions with love or money, especially women at work, because you have Venus conjunct your midheaven and the 10th house is about career. Venus also rules money and resources, as well as it's intercepted in Libra. So there's confusion about values and relationships. I think the other thing is that it's coming into a square with your IC, which is your emotions. And here we have pesky Venus transiting the late degrees of Gemini. So yesterday, today, tomorrow, right? This is like a really strong Neptune square Venus, square the descendant, square Venus on the midheaven. Like nothing is really clear right now. And until you start seeing maybe Mars trine Neptune, and eventually you'll see Venus trine Saturn, which you're going to have here over the next couple of weeks, things are going to get a little bit easier. Neptune transits are long, man. So until Neptune really is getting like closer to being in the sign of Aries, you're still going to deal with Neptune square Venus, which is, do I love what I'm doing? Do I love who I'm working with? Are these people telling me the truth that I'm working with? Can I trust them? Can I trust partners and relationships? This will get foggy anytime planets are heading around, like let's say like that 25 to 29 degree of the mutable sign. So you want to watch when Venus, Mercury, and also the Sun go through here this season. You also want to watch when Mercury, the Sun, and Mars go through Virgo later this season, or this year. And then you want to watch the Mercury retrograde that's going to be happening because Mercury and Mars are going to be at these degrees. Mutable squares are easier to deal with because they're already about change. So sometimes things dissolve or people check out or they ghost or they fall off or they deceive, which helps us make more definitive decisions about, hey, like obviously, you know, I didn't see this clearly and like now I'm seeing it for what it is and it's got to go. Suspicion also can be relating to Pluto, not just, it's not just Saturn, or excuse me, not just Neptune. And Pluto is still in a sextile to your ascendant. In fact, Pluto will be sextiling your ascendant and Neptune here again pretty soon. That just tells me like where your intuition, especially with groups of people at work, is teaching you to be like a little like, no, standoffish or kind of just, you know, not engaging. Saturn also is moving through your 12th house. It's going to conjunct your moon next year and it's coming into a square with Saturn. So there's going to be this theme of learning to listen to your intuition and like learning like not to say too much and that less is more. And sometimes by not sharing certain pieces of information that you just know intuitively or not opening your mouth and giving out knowledge or responses is probably the better way to go. And you have natal Neptune and Mars in opposition to Saturn. So you know that you can speak out and you can teach people things, but that doesn't mean they're going to hear you and that doesn't mean they're going to learn. And you've probably had a tendency to like want to teach other people. And then when they don't receive it well or they challenge you on it, you just kind of retreat, right? Because your moon is in the 12th house. So you're like, okay, I'm giving you all this like cosmic goodness and I'm like, you know, spreading all this knowledge. And if you don't want to hear it, then, you know, I'm going to go my own way. So you know, the term like don't cast pearls in front of swine. That's something you want to kind of think about, because I think the moon in the 12th house means that you really are like tapped in and you can give this feedback. But at the end of the day, not everybody is worthy of, you know, like getting that advice if they're not really going to utilize it and appreciate it. So less is more sometimes with communication. Relationship stuff is going to be more relating to Mercury. And the truth is that you've got Mercury that's going retrograde. So a Mercury retrograde is always going to have some kind of an impact in your relationships. It doesn't have to be in the 7th house. It's your 7th house Lord. So it's going retrograde right now in your 2nd house, which is which relationships do I want to hold on to? Which ones do I want to let go of? Who owes me money? Do I have the same values as other people I'm working with? Do we have disagreements about what we prioritize and what we value? Yeah, and that's really the name of the game. So, you know, Mercury is in mutual reception with Venus right now because Venus is in a mercurial sign and Mercury's in a Venus sign. So they're not making aspects, but there's a lot of like talking about what matters to you in relationships or what's most important to you, or like really coming to terms with some feelings about your home or your domestic life, or like dealing with the past and that's playing out in relationships in some way. And I think how people respond to you or don't respond to you are helping you reassess and determine like who is worth investing having a relationship with. And that's really kind of how things are playing out. The eclipses that are setting up in Scorpio, you know, are in your 8th house. So once again, that's bringing up the themes of what am I clearing out? Who am I letting go of? What's working for me? What's not working for me? Thankfully, that's very friendly if you're a Capricorn because it sextiles your Capricorn. It's very friendly if you're a Pisces moon and a Pisces rising because it's going to trine. And where you can make lemonade with this eclipse is where you can go, okay, if certain people have to exit my life because they're not giving me emotional security, or I don't feel safe, or I don't feel like I can open up, or they're not being appreciative, or they're not being transparent, then it's giving you the ability to do it. Like across the board, this particular eclipse is a really great time for being like, I'm taking out the trash. It doesn't matter where the eclipse is in your chart. It matters, but it doesn't matter because I think a lot of people are going to have this effect. And as the moon starts coming into a trine with your natal moon after the eclipse and the south node, you might feel like this emotional like kind of purge tomorrow. So just be prepared for that. Be mindful that there could be some heavy waves of emotion, hot baths, staying hydrated, all that stuff is going to help. There is still more to work out in regards to relationships in the fall. So when you have other like retrogrades and things that are going through your 7th house in the fall, you'll have more opportunities to work this out. I'm very excited to see Jupiter go into Taurus because number one, it's going to go into your 2nd house. So it's going to bring you the opportunity for more stability and abundance. So that's great in itself. But it's really great because it's going to start coming into a trine with all that Capricorn that you have. And it's going to start building on a trine to your Mercury. So you're going to have more solid commitments and collaborations at work, which could bring you more money. In turn, it's also going to bring more harmonious connections to coworkers because Mercury rules coworkers and it's in your 10th house. And it's also going to open up the door for more stability, I think, in your romantic relationships. So, you know, there is more positivity on the horizon. That Jupiter transit from, you know, 0 to 15 degrees is going to trine all your Capricorn stuff. Off and on this year and into next year. And probably when it hits around 18, 19, 20 degrees next year, you're going to find that the professional relationships, the financial situation, the romantic relationships are going to be more fulfilling. Still, you know, there's always a catch, right? And I think the catch is you're in your Sadi Santi. So Saturn's coming into conjunction with your moon. So that is moving through some heavy emotional stuff or karma relating to the mother. And you are still going to have 2 years of South Node eclipses in Libra through your 7th house where there is emotional clearing going on with relationships. So people from the past can come back. It's possible. I have seen this transit to be easier for people who are single and not in a union because the South Node eclipses can bring in karmic relationships and soulmates. If somebody comes in because you have Pluto and Uranus in your 7th house, just realize they can come in very suddenly with just a very powerful presence and force that can really radically change and transform the way that you look at relationships. And being someone that's got Chiron in opposition to Uranus and Pluto, you've had a number of experiences, I think, where there's been separation in relationships and disharmony in relationships and people that were not so consistent, and they could have had some heavy underlining issues with rebelliousness, freedom, you know, commitment issues, power struggles. So you'll see as the south node comes through there, that can clear out. And as the north node goes through Aries, it's going to sit on your Chiron and it's going to square your 10th house. You'll be in your nodal squares as well. So it's really kind of teaching you, like, take care of the body, take care of the self, be assertive, be direct, and really be focusing on what you need and what you need to go after. And if relationships come, great, but they're not the end-all be-all focus. It's going to be what's going on with yourself, your resources, your body, and also how you're building into feeling like you have more authority in your life and in your career, right? So really watch those eclipses, especially because I know you're going to have a solar eclipse conjunct your natal Uranus in the fall. So that's probably a time that you really want to watch for. Could something come sooner? Yes, but you know, that solar eclipse right on top of your natal Uranus is a bit wild. So I would imagine that that's kind of starting new cycles in regards to relationships that can come very unexpectedly, you know? Yeah, lots of change. And you know, the Neptune transit also is just, like I said, it's getting in touch with your intuition. And I think while Saturn and Neptune in your 12th house, you're still going to need some space, or a private place to work from. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see who we've got next. We've got Claire, and then Rachel and Maham. Let's see, is Claire in here? There we go. You're welcome. Okay, so Claire, I have March 16th, 1975, 11:27 p.m. And that was in the UK. Is that Wolverhampton? Am I pronouncing that right? Wolverhampton? That gives you a Gemini rising, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Taurus. Claire says, I feel like my relationship is ending. He's a Cancer rising, Libra Sun, anything in the eclipse energy, thank you. Well, if they're a Libra rising, if they are a Cancer rising, Libra Sun, the Jupiter in the 10th house is career based. The nodal eclipses and the squares to Pluto in the 7th house can be feeling like it's squeezing out a relationship if it's a relationship that's not evolving, or if somebody is resisting change. Your relationships deal more with Jupiter because you're a Gemini rising. So we can both look at Jupiter in transit, and we can look at transits going on with your natal Jupiter. And there are a few of those things happening right now, Claire. So as you may or may not know, Jupiter is currently in the sign of Aries. It's only going to be there for like another 10 days or so before Jupiter goes into Taurus. I believe when we have Jupiter go into Taurus, we're going to see lots of physical change, okay? Lots of physical shifts are going to start happening. Jupiter coming into contact with the North Node is positive. That's positive growth. It's in your 12th house, so you may feel like this is giving you a lot more alone time. You might feel like you need more resting or recuperation, and then you're going to have Jupiter that is going to sit on your natal moon, and the moon represents your 2nd house of physical or emotional security. Because Jupiter rules relationships, there can be a sense of you going, okay, I've got this relationship that's kind of icing me out. I'm spending a lot of time alone. And it's like about what you do with that time, whether you take a break or the relationship actually ends. It can cause lots of emotional isolation. There can be some stress. You might be feeling like you're sleeping more or kind of slugging around a little bit. I would recommend maybe talking to an herbalist because you have a moon in Taurus, and either working with like, you know, an herbal remedy that you can take, maybe working with aromatherapies or Bach essences, because you'll respond very well to that as a Taurus moon, to scents or smells or tastes to help you move through some of these emotional changes. At the same time that you're having this Jupiter transit, you're also going to notice that transit Neptune is getting really close to your natal Jupiter. So there can be this feeling of, you know, somebody is kind of evasive, they're not around, they're not checking in as much, I'm not hearing them. And it can represent a period of time where you're like, okay, something's changing with my relationship, where are they going? But also it's in your 11th house, which is like where are my friends when I need them? You know, what are my goals when it comes to relationships? Where am I kind of losing myself in a relationship? That can come up for you as well. There's a couple other things though. You know, Jupiter has been activating your Chiron-Venus conjunction, which represents the wounds revolving around relationships. And I noticed that you have that conjunction that's in opposition to Uranus. So there has probably been this feeling of like relationships that come and go intermittently throughout your life. And the pain of feeling kind of like ripped apart in certain relationships. And so Jupiter is triggering that. 8th house transits and 12th house transits are transits that are really good times to either practice meditation, mindfulness, reflection, or be working with like a counselor, a therapist, somebody who can help you work in this kind of like hidden realm. I especially really like Jupiter as like the teacher or gurus. When it goes into the 12th house, you may be able to find like either a therapist or you may also be able to find a hypnotherapist that can be really helpful in working through some of these fears relating to relationship issues and abandonment. I think you'll respond to it very well because you have a lot of placements in the sign of Pisces. So I do think that you'll be more comfortable with working in a subconscious state. I also feel like massage might be another option for you also, or doing like a retreat or traveling. Because Jupiter can bring positive trips or other things to like foreign places or retreat centers or places that are more hidden to help you heal. The truth is that for me, I feel like relationships often end somehow in connection to either the 6th house or the 6th house Lord, because this is the 12th to the 7th. So you've got an eclipse that's coming in here actually tomorrow that's in your 6th house. That's one marker. You've also got the fact that your 6th house Lord Venus is being transited by Jupiter. So there's been this feeling that's like, oh, something is ending. Even if it doesn't end on or around this eclipse, this might be the turning point where you're realizing like something is coming to an end. And that shift may actually start happening closer to the summertime. And also, you know, there's going to be some really positive transits that are going to be happening with Jupiter that make me feel like, is this a break? I don't know. Could it be a time for reflection and like asking yourself, is this the relationship that I want? I will tell you that I see other transits down the road that make me wonder if there is an opportunity for coming together. One of which is going to be that mid-December period, right around the time that we're having a new moon in Sagittarius. That could be a fresh start. It's going to be trining your Venus, so that's easier times in the relationship department. You're also going to start having eclipses that are going to be in the signs of Pisces and Virgo next year. So I know I'm a little early, but they're going to start coming in. So you're going to have an eclipse that's going to be in the fall of 2024, right on top of your natal Jupiter. Better times ahead for relationships as well. So like, it's a timing thing, babe. You know, you're coming into your Chiron return. I don't know what you know about that, but late 40s, early 50s, you know, when you have your Chiron return, it's like we have to come to terms with certain wounding. And I look at this as a Gemini rising, and I really strongly feel, whether you look at this from whole sign, where you have, you know, Jupiter going through your whole sign 11th, or, you know, Placidus, where Saturn's going through your Placidus 11th, you need a powerhouse group of women that have your back. Like if you have Venus and Chiron in your whole sign 11th, you need women who are independent, spicy, still active, getting out there, like supporting one another, and they're kind of like badass. If you have that, it's going to really help you throughout the next 2 or 3 years, so you're not falling back into old patterns of feeling victimized by relationships with people who don't show up for you. And you're going to have people who have your back, and you're going to have a sense of community, if that makes sense. And that may be the lesson that you have while Saturn goes through Pisces. If you don't do it now, you might start doing it over the next 2 years when Saturn hits your sun and you realize that you need support from groups of people. And I would say with Sun and Jupiter being there, it's also probably people who are like a little bit more bohemian, creative, artistic, spiritual, people who are into like meditation or retreats or yoga, and people who can really be helping you feel like you have a sense of community. Will this relationship end? A lot of it's going to depend on, you know, like their personal astrology. And, you know, I'm always cautious to tell people whether or not it will or will not work unless we have the exact times and the dates and the locations, because even then people have free will. But do you have 2 or 3 indications that a relationship may end? Yeah, you do. But also it's what you gain in the process of realizing that it may not be working. I go out on a limb here, but with Neptune being in aspect to your descendant, it does make me feel like there is a pattern or a habit of bringing in people who can be evasive or not consistent or not emotionally available, or they can have some dependency issues, or they can have some mental emotional issues, which leads to them kind of getting a little ghosty. So probably what's going to happen through the Saturn and Pisces transit is with Saturn square the nodes, you're starting to feel like you need more control and you need to know where things are going. It's also a really powerful time for you in regards to your career stuff. You know, Saturn is still in your 10th house. So if it's not about feeling like you have control over where your relationships are going, it's about feeling like you have a sense of vision with what you're creating in your professional life. And I would say, like, don't let a relationship get in the way of that, because there's something that's still being kind of worked out and perfected when it comes to your professional stuff as well. Okay, I hope that that is helpful. That's some challenging stuff, but I really love your Sun Jupiter conjunction in Pisces. I think with these Neptune transits right now, you need people who are going to be very grounding and helping you develop some of your, like, either psychic or emotional or spiritual kind of stuff that's going to be coming through that you're going to be learning. Consider like joining like a meditation group, or like going and working with people who practice hypnotherapy. It would be really wonderful for your placements at the late degrees of Pisces. All right, so that was Claire. We've got Rachel. Rachel, Maham, Lee, MSBG, Elsa, and Raja. Rachel, happy birthday. Let's see. Where is it? Let's see. And you spell your name differently and it gets me every time. Where is it? No, I've got you. I put you in here. Don't worry. I've got you. I'm trying to find where I put you. Because I'm using my other software, so there's like hundreds of charts in here. Sorry. No, that's not you. Where is it? All right, I'll just put you in here again. Could have sworn I had you in here, maybe not. That's right, I forget your birthday is Star Wars Day. All right. No, I just lost you. It's just Mercury retrograde. This retrograde's right in opposition to my natal Mercury, so it's a lot of me having communication issues. It's me, it's not you. All right, Rachel, I've got you here. Virgo rising, Sun in Taurus, and Moon in Gemini. It's Rachel's birthday, and it's also an eclipse. That is conjunct her Saturn in opposition to her Sun, so there's some crazy stuff going on. So let's look. Anything I see in regards to love are both questions. Love, work, all that stuff. Just looking at your annual perfection. So you're 39 now, so you're in a Jupiter year. And that's going to be relating to your whole sign 4th house. A couple of people have asked me, how do I How do I know the annual perfections? I check my software. That's why you paid for good software, so you don't have to crunch those numbers yourself. So just to give you a little like food for thought, this will run from your birthday now into your birthday next year. So you want to use with annual perfections whole sign housing. I can do it, so don't worry, but some other people can't do it. So Jupiter rules your 4th house. What is the 4th house? Home, family, roots, where you're living, the past, ends of situations, stuff in regards to parents. Jupiter is a positive planet, so it does indicate that there will be positive changes going on with the home family dynamic this year, okay? So the way that this works is you're going to want to pay attention to when Jupiter changes signs, which it's going to in 2 weeks. You want to pay attention to when planets go through your 7th house, your 4th house, and when Jupiter retrogrades. So just listen for all of those aspects throughout the next year. But for starters, the big thing that kind of comes up for me is that Jupiter is going to come into your 9th house, which is more positive, optimistic. You're going to see that there's more opportunities for traveling, for learning. You may move, you may consider moving, you may travel more, you may go and visit people in other places. Family that may live further away may come and visit you. Jupiter is going to move into Taurus mid-May, and it's going to sit on your Venus. And that's amazing because it looks like you might do some kind of training or something at home that might bring you some more money. Or it's possible that there's like extended relatives that want to be more generous or want to kind of help you with home or home situations. If you're thinking about doing some training at home or homeschooling or anything like that, it could even be for your kids. Maybe that's one way it plays out. But Jupiter hitting your Venus can bring a new relationship, especially because Jupiter is going to sextile Saturn. So 9th house is like traveling, foreigners, cultural differences. It can be about ceremonies. So it's possible that maybe like, you know, friends who you've known for a long time are like, hey, I'm getting married. We're having this wedding. We're having a big backyard wedding. Do you want to come? The answer is always yes. In this next year, if people ask you if you want to travel or if they ask you if you want to go to a wedding or a party or a graduation, the answer is always yes. Because it's going to, number one, bring you positive things, but also open the door to you possibly meeting what could be another significant partner. So stay open to that. Jupiter is going to sit conjunct your Venus for a little bit. It's going to start to leave. And even when it does, the North Node is on your Venus. So that's another indication that a significant partner can come in June. And then Jupiter is heading for a connection with your Sun. Foreign man. I mean, I know this sounds crazy. You might be a foreign guy. You might meet a guy while you're doing some continuing education. You might have a crush on a teacher. You might meet somebody who is a professor or who teaches something. It could be somebody who is also into photos, photography, filmmaking. Maybe they're like into documentaries. Somebody like that can kind of pop up. And Jupiter transits are really important for Virgo risings because, you know, Jupiter is the traditional ruler of your 7th house. So Jupiter on the Sun, Jupiter on your Venus, Saturn in your 7th house, Jupiter trying the ascendant. It's like, it's on like Donkey Kong all summer long. Not that it's not about career stuff, okay? It is, but it isn't. You just had an eclipse on your Mercury, which means you're open to change, you personally, and also changing what you're doing for work and how you get money. But later in the summer, when the North Node hits Jupiter, when the North Node hits your Mercury in Aries, more can kind of come through. I'm getting the vibe that if work stuff's going to change, it would be August, December, or March, April. Those would be the 3 months that you would see some kind of shift, unless you decide to take a new job, which would be in a completely different field in February. So relationship stuff is like across the board. You know, I feel like anybody who's been kind of swimming around, who's like pre-existing, that could be something, you're going to figure out over the summer whether or not they stay or whether or not they go. And looking at your birthday with the eclipse, I mean, it's just wild because you have a full moon on your birthday. So it's bringing up the theme of your natal Sun in opposition to Saturn. Sun is like where you're feeling kind of like in the dark or you're kind of separate from someone. Saturn can be love or romance. So where you've been kind of feeling this ongoing storyline of like, I have somebody, but then there's distance, and then I have them, and then there's distance. Likely this is the year where some of that stuff kind of gets flushed out. And you have the moon or the lunar eclipse trine your 7th house, and the sun sextile your 7th house. So I think it's like a thing. There may be a sense of needing to deal with the past though. So I've noticed like with annual perfection year 4, you know, if a parent needs to move, if you need to clean out your house, if you need to, you know, deal with a situation that finally has to come to an end with old relationships or baby daddies and stuff, you deal with that. Making room for the next year when you go into a 5th house year when there can be more loves and relationships and things going on. But this is the year that you finally make a decision. And I would really pay attention to July and August, because that seems to be the bigger turning point for whether or not you decide to kind of like let something be and keep it in the past and move forward, or say, okay, show up and then, you know, let's go to the next step. Keep in mind also that the sun represents men and Saturn in the 3rd house is communication. So it's highlighting where there's issues revolving around whether or not people are ready or can communicate or express that they're ready to move forward in the capacity that you want, right? So that's going to be dealt with all year. When we get to Leo season, Scorpio season, and Aquarius season, when planets are going to be squaring, that's when you're going to feel the intensity, because this is halfway through the eclipses and this is halfway through the eclipses. So the kind of turning points will happen, especially under Leo and under Aquarius, before you're kind of coming to the next point in your year. But for the most part, I mean, Saturn square the nodes, it's like people are either with it or they're getting left behind. And you really want to watch when Saturn turns retrograde here in a couple of weeks, because it's going to turn retrograde right on your descendant, right around the 2nd half of June. And then by the time you get to July, when planets are opposing Saturn, you're going to kind of go back and forth with somebody. And if they're not ready to move forward, then you'll make the decisions to kind of cut people from the team right around the beginning of September. And pay attention to the events taking place around your birthday. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, whatever is kind of coming up, that will mirror and kind of reverberate outward. But lunar eclipse full moon years are always big years. There's big completions and like positive things that come full circle. Hopefully that's helpful for you. And let's see, so we've got Maham. Am I saying this correct? You're welcome, Rachel. Maham says, struggling to find a job and move. How can I break through to pivot out of my current career and move out of my current city that I do not like? Thank you for your work and time. All right, cool. Let's talk about it. So you are a Leo rising, sun in Pisces, and moon in Scorpio. Hello, lunar return. How has today been for you? Has it been a little overwhelming? You got the south node on your moon. Definitely needing some TLC, some counseling, some care, some rest, recuperation. That's some stress. Have you been thinking about moving? Has that come up for you? You know, a lunar return factored in with a south node connection and a lunar eclipse is just like, ah! Okay, you took tomorrow off, probably for the better. Hopefully you're going to be drinking drinks like me all day. So, you know, south node is what we let go of, right? The home represents, or the moon represents the home. And I think that it may benefit you possibly looking for work in another country. Okay, I'm not just saying that because of the south node. I'm saying it for a couple of different reasons. The moment of this eclipse, Mars, which is the ruler, is in the 12th house in Cancer, which is about movement, 12th house, foreign lands. So looking into being able to do work in another place is step number one. The other thing that I can see is that you're in a Mercury retrograde in the 10th house, which means something's changing or turning in directions in terms of what you want to do career-wise. Mercury is your goals, and it's also about money. So you're like, what else can I do that's going to give me the money that I need? How can I find a job that's going to pay me what I want? And it's all just kind of ricocheting off of your Aquarius and also your moon. So I'm not going to say it's not going to bring any changes, but I am going to say that there's a lot of like feeling the emotional kind of, oh, I'm stuck where I'm living or I'm with my family. And then the challenges revolving around your schedule, your skills, and like where you're living. So until that retrograde is over the next 2 weeks, and then Jupiter moves through these degrees, you're going to keep feeling this over and over. Yes, skills and scheduling need to change. Yes, there can be some changes in your living situation. My goodness, it's such an amazing time to be a Leo rising, because you guys have eclipses still that are wrapping up in your 10th, the North Node that's still in your 10th, Jupiter that's going to be in your 10th all year, and Jupiter represents things that are going to be big. So talent, skills, creativity, and the willingness to kind of put yourself out there and show what you can do is really important over the next year. I think because Jupiter represents foreign lands, and because Jupiter is going to be in your 10th house in opposition to your moon, is why I would encourage you to maybe be looking at things that may be international companies or things that would allow you to potentially transfer. Here's the challenge. The challenge is that Saturn is in Pisces, and it does feel really heavy if you have a lot of natal placements in Pisces. And Saturn is coming into contact both with Venus, which is feeling the challenges when it comes to relationships with people at work, or being told no, or not yet, or we don't have the budget, or not, now is not the right time. And Saturn is going to conjunct your sun. So that's really important, because probably two of the bigger transits you'll go through is Saturn conjunct your chart ruler and Saturn conjunct your sun. Both of them can be about big decisions in regards to your career and your purpose. So it's like you're having it all at the same time. I'm just kind of going out on a limb here, but like, are you involved in either finances or banking or investments? Do you have any experience in that and having clients and doing that type of work? Or are you involved in like design or property or like real estate, interior design, or either one of those occupations that you participate in? Because you could do any of those. I wonder with Saturn coming into contact with Venus and the sun, if it's going to be about learning how to have like client relationships and managing clients and talking to them about investments. You're in higher education. Okay. So I wonder if there's room here for like doing work in regards to trauma and therapy and psychology, because it's in your 8th house. I wonder if you're going to specialize in working with people who need more like emotional care and TLC, and giving them direction and helping them kind of cope through life changes. And Jupiter, yeah, teaching, but Jupiter's going to go into your 10th house, which means if you're going to focus in higher education or guidance, you're either going to take a higher position or you're going to be kind of leading a group of people. So, I mean, yeah, you could still do that, but something's going to change with your 8th house Lord being in your 10th house. Something is going to change about the way that you're doing the work that you're doing. So I would just say, you know, stay open to that. It's interesting that you have Saturn in your 9th and that it's in opposition to Mars, because that means at some point, especially right around your Saturn's return, you may realize that you want to switch gears and do something else differently in terms of your career. And it may be for financial reasons. I have degrees in public health, so I've been looking into helping people in that aspect. Okay, yes. Saturn going into your 8th house is like dealing with people who may have emotional, psychological, drug-related issues, maybe poverty, people who are homeless. I could see that. And like, look, you have a Scorpio moon. Like, you can handle that. The fact that your moon is in Scorpio and it's conjunct Chiron means emotional healing, and it trines your 8th house sun. So it may not sound like the most glamorous type of work, but you may end up doing something like that. And with Saturn in your 8th house this year on your sun, there can be a sense of taking jobs that are kind of like going places where other people are afraid to go. And you may not get the immediate pay that you want, but you're willing to get the experience and do the work, and you may be able to get a position where you're leading the team. And it may be worth the experience for a year or so, right? Who knows? Like I said, something about your Saturn return, though, there's going to be a change. Because Saturn in opposition to Mars means that you're going to either go, okay, I'm going to go into a different direction, or I'm changing what I'm doing for financial reasons. So It may not be something that you do for a long period of time. Really look at that eclipse at the end of October. That's really bringing some really positive changes in your career, because you're going to see a lunar eclipse with the moon exalted and Jupiter right on your midheaven. So likely a lot of these things, even if they're not happening right now or over the summer, you know, probably over the summer is when you're more open to making changes in your living situation, may start hitting right around the fall. And I would definitely be looking at jobs outside of your area code, your zip code, wherever you're living. It could be in other places that may give you the opportunity to relocate and also take a higher paying position. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay, now we have Lee, and then MSBG, Elsa, and Raja. Lee, thank you for your patience. Sometimes these astrology videos they're long. The live ones are long. You're welcome. Okay, Lee, I've got you here. January 27th, 1987 at 8:17 a.m. in Texas. I want to know if the person I'm talking to is a good match. So that's a synastry question. I should have mentioned that. Let me know if you want me to talk about relationships. It is a different price for synastry. It's $65 to look at 2 different charts. If you want me to take a look at that. Sorry, I did not catch that until just now. But I will talk to you a little bit about your relationships either way. So one thing that I would say to take into consideration is that Leo rules your 7th house of relationships. So what you attract are people who are creative, youthful, fun, warm, inviting. And being that the sun rules your 7th house of relationships and it's in the 12th, I can see like the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a sense of like clearing out old relationships, coming to terms with what does and doesn't work for you, maybe realizing that certain relationships had to go, learning to be more self-sufficient, and like letting go of relationships that made you feel isolated or kind of like out in the cold. Sometimes when we have the sun and Mercury in the 12th house, there is like this invisible wall around us where it's hard for us to sometimes connect with people or talk about how we're feeling or what we're thinking. So I would say just take that into consideration, that there can be a sense of people not always being able to read you very well. Now your sun makes a number of aspects in your natal chart. It makes a sextile to Mars in the North Node. So that does tell me that through these periods of kind of isolation or separation, you're able to communicate more and express yourself so you don't get stuck there. And your sun is also in a square to Pluto. So there can be some hangups and some challenges revolving around power struggles in relationships, whether or not you feel like you have control. I can see some really unique aspects, like Sun square Pluto can indicate some issues with father figures and like bullying and people that are mean. And Moon conjunct Neptune can represent challenges revolving around emotional transparency or vulnerability with other people. So there can be some family patterning things that you've picked up that has had an effect on you and your relationships with other people. A time period to pay attention to, I keep referencing, but I'm going to keep referencing because it's a big one, will be the Venus retrograde, the end of July through September of 2023, when Venus goes retrograde in your house of relationships. Venus rules communication, but for whole sign Aquarius, it's the past. And it also represents like the bigger picture in relationships and gaining clarity in terms of where relationships are actually going. Thank you. I saw your message. So looking at this other person, February 15th, 86. Now we don't know the time, so we're not going to speculate. I'm just going to make it midday, and I want to look at their astrology with their planets on top of your chart. They have an Aquarius sun and Jupiter sitting right on your ascendant. Off the bat, I really like that a lot, because having somebody whose sun is on your ascendant helps you go in the direction that you need to in life. So Aquarius risings, unconventional, what's different, going against the grain, having fun, going out there, having a good time, focusing on your goals, and just you know, being different. So he really embodies that, right? Because he's got Sun and Jupiter. So he's got like a really big personality. So he can bring more of that to your life. He can bring more expansion and joy, and also can bring you opportunity to kind of see the bright side of things. So it's a really great person to have around because he's going to kind of aid in the direction that your life needs to go. He's got Venus in Pisces and you've got Jupiter in Pisces. It's not conjunct, but it's in the same sign. So I think that's great as well, because if his Venus is in your first house, there's attraction in a sense of kind of like, this person can kind of be like Velcro with you. Like once they're around, like they don't go anywhere. Like it's hard to kind of separate. Venus and Mercury also are nice aspects. It does mean that he can be really sweet with his communication. You know, right now Saturn is there, so he may be feeling a little bit of like making some big decisions about commitments in relationships and having conversations about what he can and cannot do with Saturn's transit. He's got a moon in Taurus, so an Aquarius sun with a moon in Taurus can produce a stubborn individual because there's lots of fixed energies here. So the moon is really happy in Taurus. It's about pleasure and security and stability. When it squares all this Aquarius, this is somebody who is very eccentric and very unique and very independent, which I think you appreciate, honestly, with these placements. What catches my eye is that he has Uranus conjunct your Venus. So did you feel like this was like love at first sight, or there's something like very electric about the connection? Or do you feel like there is like a lot of hot and cold, on and off, back and forth? Is there anything like that? That sits right on top of your Venus, and it also squares your Jupiter. So there can be this feeling that he has like a really big impact on your life, your philosophy, your career, your goals, like lots of, that's big energy. Mars on the midheaven, so he incentivizes you to take action and be like more assertive. And he does have Mars and Saturn there, so there is a sense of like pushing you to be more optimistic and broad-minded when it comes to what is possible in your career. But there can also be like a limiting factor, so just be mindful. Saturn can be challenging or it can be helpful depending on how it works out. He was born with Venus and Mercury square Saturn and Mars, so that does mean when it comes to communicating and expressing his needs, he's not always the best at it. So there's some challenges this year with his Saturn square and like learning how to really talk about what he values the most and like what his goals are, what he's hoping to achieve, especially financially. Definitely the Venus retrograde's gonna be big for both of you, being that he's an Aquarius sun, you're an Aquarius rising. So, and you're an Aquarius sun as well. So that July, August, September is the time to really watch, because you're both gonna be going through those same transits where you're figuring out what you need in relationships. I'm not concerned about the astrology. Like the synastry is really nice, but he's got some hangups with, you know, Saturn square Venus. Like he has some work to do in relationships and with his finances, and also with Mercury, Venus square Saturn and Mars. It's like he has to be better about some of his goals or some of his friendships, because it can inhibit his ability to be more financially successful. That might be about kind of cooling it on the partying or on the traveling aspect. I like your guys' Moon-Neptune connection because it mirrors your own natal Moon-Neptune connection. So it can feel very spiritual, otherworldly, very strong psychic connection. Do you feel like you guys can kind of like read each other's minds a little bit? Mercury in the first house. He also may tell you he just really loves like just who you are. Like he might tell you that he just loves the way you dress, or he loves your demeanor or your attitude, or like he loves like the way that you move. Like he'll be very vocal about the fact that he just likes that you're authentic and that you're you, right? And you guys have a lot of similar placements. You guys were born, you know, within a year of each other. So having these Saturn, Uranus aspects, that's not abnormal. And I do feel like he's kind of come in to help you accept these eccentric kind of parts of yourself and not feel like a weirdo or not feel like an alien that's kind of like different and isolated, where maybe other people didn't see or appreciate your quirks. He does, and he's going to tell you how much he likes them. I think it's great. I really love that. I mean, one of my astrology teachers told me a long time ago, probably one of the best synastry aspects you can have is either a sun-moon connection or having somebody who has their sun or their Venus along your ascendant. You have that, sun, Venus, and Jupiter on the ascendant. So he really enhances your ability to be yourself. And that's a great person to kind of have by your side as you're going through really prominent outer planet transits, because they're going to walk with you step by step and kind of go through some of those changes with you. So gets my stamp of approval, at least in terms of the synastry. Make sure he's working on his communication. Watch for what comes up over the summertime. That's going to be a definitive turning point, I think, for both of you when it comes to relationships. And this eclipse is in opposition to his moon. So big career happenings going on for him right now, which is kind of ricocheting all over his placements. But, you know, you've got some of the same stuff going on, so you guys can manage it together, you know? Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks for your patience, Lee. You're welcome. Okay, there we go. So I have MECD. Okay, so October 23rd, 1963 at 8:30 p.m. in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and sending me info on you and another person. So same thing, if you have questions specifically about synastry, let me know, although I can see a lot through your own transits. September 3rd, got fed up and severed your alliance. 15 years of on and off because she wants to see other people. Things don't pan out. We raised her son together and numerous pets. Okay. So one thing that I will just say off the bat, without even looking at anybody else's aspects, because I can pretty confidently answer this with just looking at your transits. First of all, how are you doing? How are you doing? I'm going to make sure you're okay, because this is some intense stuff that you're dealing with right now. So this is one of the big ones. I was waiting. I was like, somebody's going to show up and they're going to have something at 14 degrees of Scorpio. And this is going to be like that situation where it's going to be a pivotal turning point and it's going to be really difficult. And well, it's now 3 hours into the show and you're the second or third to the last person, and it's you. So take it easy the next couple days. Okay. So the eclipse that's coming in tomorrow is at 14 degrees of Scorpio. So the eclipse is right on your Venus. Okay. So when you have a solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, full moon, any of that stuff, completions or eclipses on a personal planet, it's going to remind you, it's going to keep coming up over and over, talking about that natal placement. So Venus in Scorpio is in a sign that is associated with Mars or Pluto. So death, sex, transition, transformation, secrets, sometimes feeling like, you know, somebody has deceived us or disappointed us or, you know, was unfaithful, whatever the issue is. Venus in Scorpio is not an easy placement to have because Venus wants to open, but Scorpio says, oh, is it safe? So having your own natal, you know, Venus in Scorpio, the last several years has been a lot, right? We've seen Saturn square. I can see that you were born with Saturn square Venus and Neptune. So part of your Saturn return was like this turning point in a relationship and whether or not a relationship was going to end, especially in the 6th house. And then you've also had Uranus in opposition to like Venus and Neptune. So this has been something that's been brewing for a while. Okay, so you have this, you know, full moon, lunar eclipse. Emotional overload, detoxing, clearing with the moon in Scorpio, lots of purging. You want to really watch because there can be lots of tummy issues, digestional issues, bad habits, things that can come up over like the next couple of days. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I would say this is a time to be like, I'm going to clean out my cupboards. I'm going to clean out my kitchen. No processed food. Really watch for eating stuff that's like caffeine and sugar. Watch the alcohol because bad habits can kind of come in very quickly with some of these transits. Cool. You took the fitness route. I like it. So this eclipse, push water and just watch what's going on with your emotions. Now, Venus is intercepted in Libra. So that's kind of important being a Libra. It means that's a blind spot for you. And also Venus rules the 12th house of what is subconscious and what's ending. So I get the hermit mode, but I'm wondering like you're in hermit mode going like, okay, so is this it? Like, are we done? Like, am I going to hear anything? Like, are we just moving forward? Like, what's the definitive answer? Eclipses can play out for days after. So I would be watching after the eclipse, maybe when the moon is coming through Sagittarius, there's going to be more clarity revolving around like, oh yeah, maybe this is done. I mean, relationships end in the 6th house. So if you've got an eclipse on your Neptune Venus, which is where somebody didn't show up and give you clarity and give you what you need anyway, now it's like giving that to yourself. Then what you're going to see is that this Mercury retrograde, which is your chart ruler, is still in opposition to Venus and Neptune. And that can literally be a person who's, you know, not giving you the communication and the clarity that you need. So where will you get that clarity? Through a dream, through a reading, through talking to a psychic, an astrologer, a therapist? Watch when Mercury comes back into opposition with the eclipse degree around May 30th. It may be that you look at this and go, if I hear nothing, that's just my definitive ending, and that's how I'm choosing to you know, move forward with this. And if I don't get a response by the time there's a full moon in Sagittarius on June 4th, that might be the turning point where you're really moving to the next phase. That's what I'm anticipating. And, you know, as a Libra sun, you just had a solar eclipse in opposition to your sun, which was in Aries, right? So it is bringing up goals that you are feeling like is shifting, and maybe it's showing you where, you know, you're like, all right, it's time for me to kind of cut something loose. Jupiter, which rules relationships, is also in opposition to your sun, which can represent a separation, and also a separation involving a child, 5th house, because the eclipses are also happening in opposition to Mercury. So it's like feeling like, oh, I'm losing a partner, but also like there's this kid that's in the mix as well. Okay, so then the South Node is going to come into contact with your sun. And I feel like that's also going to be another clearing. That might be healing like issues revolving around, you know, father wounds, relationship wounds, clearing out the heart space. That'll be in July. And when it hits that 28 degrees, it's still being squared by Pluto. Pluto squares in general and Pluto 8th house transits are wonderful times for therapy, for counseling, for trauma therapy, any of that stuff. I would really recommend any of that if you're really struggling in July. You can do this preemptively now because Pluto is in a square to your sun. And that literally feels like through some dramatic, traumatic change that's going on, you're kind of feeling like your heart is breaking. And I don't know if that's the ending of the relationship or the connection to the kid. There can be father-related issues that come up throughout this transit, and issues also with men. Once again, 29 degrees of Libra, in my opinion, does always represent at some point through transit or at some point in the natal chart, this feeling of like, oh, I'm going through a separation that feels like a divorce. Now, in modern day astrology, you don't have to be actually married. If you live with somebody, you own a house, you have a kid, you raise a kid together, you have a pet, you're engaged, like you're married. Like the actual ceremony is the 9th house. So I'm looking at Pluto square the sun as the separation of the relationship, the separation of the finances, the separation of the belongings, no longer having that contact or that connection with the kid, and moving on and re-situating yourself financially. That's actually what's kind of coming in for you now, of being like, okay, this is the, you know, this is the turning point, and this is like where the relationship is actually kind of changing. Thank you, I got your message. So the other person is March 12th, 1982. At 10:30. Linden. So they've got Venus in Aquarius, Sun in Pisces. Oh, so they have all this on your natal Sun and Mercury. So the South Node is swinging through their Jupiter and their Sun and all of that stuff. Okay. And they've got Moon square Venus. Let me flip this around a little bit. Well, I mean, you know, Scorpio rising, they have Uranus going in and out of their 7th house. And that in itself is enough for like a changing in a situation in a home life, in the relationship, and a partner potentially wanting to move in or out. Chiron on the descendant is the wounds that are going on for the partner financially or in terms of self-esteem and emotion. So the last 2 years look like it's been a nightmare. You know, with Saturn going into the 4th house, squaring Uranus and Chiron on the descendant. I mean, you know, you brought somebody in, and you love who you love, but you brought somebody in where I feel like you're really connected to them because of all the Scorpio and all the Libra. Like, you can handle a lot of stuff, but all of your placements sitting in their 12th house is like feeling like it's a blind spot, and it's really hard for you to help them get out of this hole. You guys have a Pluto Sun conjunction. So that can be like moth to a flame, but it can also keep bringing up these same pains and issues. And until Uranus is fully, you know, in the 7th house to stay, which it is now, and moving past Chiron, there's going to be some issues revolving around issues with the relationship. Jupiter is also going to come into a square with Venus. So if there is a tendency for this person to be entertaining or talking to other people because they have Venus in the 3rd, it's like a partner is not going to want to stay open or want to deal with that, right? I get why you guys came together. I'm going to tell you that this person really may still need a lot of work until we start seeing, you know, both Uranus come out of a square with their Mercury, which can be also about mental habits and other issues. And the list goes on. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but this is a really difficult chart to have. Saturn, Mars, Pluto in the 12th house means issues with relationships, secret relationships, not being completely honest about what they're doing in those relationships, and it squares the nodes. So yeah, relationships, sex addiction, things like that. They can work through it, right? But like, you know, Saturn's coming into conjunction with their sun, which means like sobriety is on the horizon, really needing to take responsibility for their home, their life, their career, right? Their kids. To be honest with you, I feel like this is the kind of person that you want to take a step back from and basically be like, look, until you are willing to face some of the demons and like acknowledge some of the stuff and work through it, no dice. And also, I think Jupiter coming into their 7th house is a really great time. Like, this person would benefit by going to therapy because they would have the Jupiter-Chiron conjunction, which would be like a mentor or a teacher or a therapist that can help them heal and work through some of their childhood, you know, related issues and trauma. Usually when I see Moon conjunct Pluto, or like Moon Pluto or Saturn Pluto aspects in these signs in the 12th house, there's a history of abuse. Sex abuse, or, you know, obviously drug and alcohol, physical abuse. So I don't know what you know about the relationship with one of the parents, but that is really strongly tied to the 12th house. And it all comes into a square with Venus, which means that, you know, there is repressed issues with these topics that they've dealt with from one of their parents, and it materializes as them communicating and being kind of mean. So Pluto and the Moon and Jupiter square Venus means they don't communicate very kindly to partners, and they're not very receptive when people are asking them what's wrong, or let's talk about it, or we need to kind of heal this thing. They get like really kind of touchy. And like I said, I get why you have the attraction, but there's a lot of placements in the 12th house which tell me that you're going to be the person who's trying to save, when really I think they're going to learn a lot more if you take a step back. And if you're like, I'm out of here. You'll have opportunities to reconnect in relationships. That's not, that timing is there. There's a Mercury retrograde in their 7th house, which means a partner's pulling back. That's you. You're going to have an opportunity to reconnect if you want to reconnect and figure out what you're doing with the relationship or the living situation over this summer, July, August. And then I think the grand finale is probably going to be the eclipse at the end of October, and when you start to have retrogrades here. So just because you guys don't communicate or you take a step back does not necessarily mean it's over, okay? They're going through eclipses which are super gnarly, which means they're probably spiraling out and dealing with a bunch of stuff right now. But that's stuff that they need to kind of clear out and they need to deal with. So those would be the months you want to watch. But for the meantime, An eclipse conjunct your Venus and your Neptune is literally about a woman who is not really showing up the way that you need to, is hiding out, not dealing with their issues, which is crashing a relationship, and whether or not there's a definitive decision that's made. And the truth is that during Scorpio eclipses, all kinds of skeletons come out the closet. So be mindful that in the midst of this eclipse for the next couple of days or next couple of weeks, you may find out that there's more stuff going on, or more going on behind the scenes than what meets the eye, things that they're dealing with, pain that they're having, psychological issues, issues revolving finances, trauma, that kind of stuff. And it's really important for you to take care of your own health right now with that eclipse on your Venus. I'm glad to hear you're leaning into the fitness and the wellness and all that stuff. Meditation and staying hydrated, and maybe even listening to binaural beats and other things to help with your emotions can be really helpful. Hopefully that's helpful. Let's see, is this the right Elsa? No, different Elsa. I guess I have a couple. There we go. And hold on a second, I don't know if that's right. No, that's not right. That's a different Elsa. Okay, so I gotta plug this one in. Okay, sorry guys. Elsa. So December 2nd, 1970. And that was at 8:30 p.m. Let's see. Where is it? No, that's not it. There we go. Sorry. I'm like losing people for some reason. I think I have too many charts in here. Hey Elsa, there we go. Okay, so December 2nd, 1970 at 8:30 p.m. Thank you for your question and your patience. Elsa says, is it a good time for me to buy a house in Italy? Do I go ahead? Good question. Well, let me ask you a question. Have you already started looking at houses in Italy? Because you got Pluto sitting on your moon. So as a Leo rising, that means that from a whole sign perspective, you're ready to totally change and transform your home. Pluto sitting on your moon can be a real estate agent, and it can be a woman or people who are really pushy or really adamant about selling you a house, having you buy a house. It can also bring up challenges in regards to women that can be really difficult to deal with. So you might find that there's somebody selling their house, but they're going back and forth. You may hear things because Pluto is a darker planet that's like, oh, my mom died, so we're selling her house. Or, you know, we inherited this house and now we're selling it. Or I'm a widow and it's too big for me, so now I'm selling it. Some connection to death, property, and real estate all seems to kind of be intertangled. The interesting thing is that, you know, the nodes are squaring the moon and Pluto on your moon. So it is saying you're really adamant to change your home. It also is going to require you to make some change in your regular living situation. So I'm going to assume that means you're going to be spending more time in Italy, or you're moving from one location to another because the nodal squares are taking place. You know, the fact that you're about to have a full moon here tells me that there can be something that can come up rather quickly over the next like week or two that's like, hey, I'm going to find something. I mean, I would pay attention to what's going on literally on the 5th, because when the moon hits your natal Jupiter and it's right after the eclipse, you might find out that something is coming in, but you might deal with some difficult people when it comes to buying homes. Pluto at 0 degrees, as silly as it sounds, you may find homes that have electrical issues. You may be moving into an area where there's a lot of turmoil going on in the cities that you're looking at because the moon is the people. So with Pluto in Aquarius, you might be like finding the perfect house, but you're like, well, there's like protests and there's like things going on, or there's like issues going on politically, and you'll go like, oh, do I want to move there? I would also take a smudge stick or something with you, because I see a lot of people when they go through Pluto moon transits that they move into houses, and sometimes the houses are haunted, or we see that there's some weird, spooky, or paranormal things that are going on. You may bring somebody in to kind of cleanse the space or bless the space. That's another option if that's something that you decide to do. Positive, moves I see when we see harmonious aspects to the 4th house Lord. So here you have Venus that is now coming into a trine with Mars, an eclipse that's in your 4th house, and Pluto on your moon. All things seem to suggest that you're going to move, but it's going to be a huge transformation and a huge shift for you emotionally. I'd like to see like maybe the moon coming into a trine with Saturn, into a conjunction with Saturn and a trine with the moon. So another positive transit might be right around May 13th that you might hear something. Another option will be when the moon, when Venus comes into a trine with Jupiter, right around May 22nd through the 28th. Does Mercury need to be direct before buying? Well, you've already had the Cazimi. If you're going to commit to buying property and buying a home, I would say let's wait until Mercury is coming into a conjunction with your Saturn and a trine from the moon. So ideally, you're signing paperwork, committing to things, transferring the funds right around the end of May, like right around the 27th. When you have the moon in your money house, trine Mercury, and you're also seeing trines from Saturn to the South Node. I would prefer you wait until the Mercury retrograde is over, only because you have Saturn, which is in your 10th house, and it's about money and having control over money. So that's just me. So if you can wait until closer to the 26th, 27th, that would be a better time. But Mercury is going to go direct here later this week. It'll be direct at 5 degrees right around the 14th. So yeah, sometime right around there is when you're going to be able to sign it if that's what you really want to do. But like I said, be mindful of who you're dealing with and that there can be some very pushy people. And then right around the time the sun's coming into Gemini, it's going to trine the moon, and it's also going to trine Uranus. So I could see you securing the deal, but I don't know if you're going to move until sometime between August and I'm going to say like October. That would be the time the move actually happens. So if you're setting up, buying the house and doing all of that stuff now, it makes sense, but you won't likely move until either the end of summer or going into fall, right? Sometime around there is likely when that's going to happen. Congrats on moving though. That's really exciting. You've got all the placements for it. You need to move in December. Okay. Well, you might move sooner. You might start downsizing then over the summertime, but moving in December when Mercury is retrograde, there can be issues with movers. So if you do need to move, just as a recommendation, start securing all the stuff for movement movers. If you're having to like get stuff ready to go in like crates and get shipped out, and maybe start doing all of that at the end of October, beginning of November. And I would advise you to move within the first 2 weeks. Do not move the second half of December, because you'll have issues with timing and scheduling and assistance with the move. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Let us know where you end up. We would love to hear. You're welcome. Okay, so we've got Raja. Am I saying this correct? Raja, December 25th, 1975. You're a Christmas baby? That's going to give you a Scorpio rising, Capricorn sun, and your moon is in Libra. So asking questions about this eclipse, huh? So being a Scorpio rising, obviously you're going to feel it. Raya. Okay, thank you. Raya. Being a Scorpio rising, you're going to feel it, but it's not going to be in your first house. So it may benefit you listening to like Sagittarius predictions for the eclipse because it's technically going to be in your 12th house at 14 degrees. So when we have a lunar eclipse in the 12th house, what happens? Trouble sleep. Sometimes we are doing like this emotional or kind of spiritual clearing. There can be a sense of detoxing, releasing, going through some traumas and things that we're just ready to finally kind of close the door on. At the time of this particular eclipse, we're going to have Mars, which is the ruler, in your 8th house. So this to me seems like it's about saying goodbye to things, saying goodbye to someone, making a decision to kind of clear out, detox, or put an end to bad habits. So that's another way of looking at it. You are going to have Mars that is coming into a trine with Neptune. So I feel like it's also about doing a lot of like emotional, family, or ancestral clearing. So that's another way of looking at this. The eclipse is very close to your north node, within about 6 degrees. And so, you know, the nodes in astrology are connected to the moon. They represent kind of where we're collectively going or what we're moving away from. So for you to have the North Node and Venus in Scorpio and an eclipse there can be bringing in an opportunity to say, okay, I'm finally clearing out the cobwebs in my love life, or I'm finally going to be kind of saying goodbye to people who have done nothing but create problems. Secret admirers may pop up. There might be people who are interested in you that you have never been aware of before. There can be some really strong visions or dreams or feelings revolving around romantic partners that are showing up at this time. You've had Venus that's been transiting your Mars recently as well. So what has that been like? Has there been a sense of there being like new potential romantic partners, or has there been more action in the relationship department recently? North Node eclipses in your 5th. I mean, listen. I mean, I know you're a Scorpio rising and Mars and Pluto rule your chart, but listen to Sagittarius because it's going to give you more accurate predictions in general horoscopes. Between a retrograde in your 5th, it makes me feel like you're reevaluating what you want from dating. North Node and Jupiter in the 5th. What do I love? Who do I love? What am I creating? What makes me happy? And then this eclipse that is on top of your Venus, it's very likely that it's bringing up this theme of being like, how can we create more? Okay, you have a partner. How can we create more time together? How can we be focusing on more intimacy together? Where are we going? What are we doing? What are we talking about, right? How are we growing together on a spiritual level? Uranus is gonna hit your south node here soon. And that can create some changes with a partner, kind of being in or out of the house. They might be traveling more. They might be traveling for work. They might start talking to you saying they're getting kind of restless, that they want to make some changes. Then you're going to have Uranus that's going to oppose your Venus. So that in itself is another indication that there are some changes that are coming with partners. Have you guys had this discussion? Is it time to start thinking about living somewhere else? Or are you guys in need of a vacation? Have you guys discussed just needing to get out of the house more? Anything like that? Because that's all kind of coming through your chart. If you have a partner that's a Sag rising with Saturn going into their 4th house, I mean, it's like they're going to feel like there's a lot of home or family responsibilities. There's a burden revolving around that stuff. He's stalling on his divorce, and we just had a serious convo about why he's stalling when she cheated. Okay, so there you go. You know, Uranus can represent divorce. So Uranus being along the south node, it can also be about you being like, look, if this doesn't change, I'm making changes. Because Venus being in the 12th house can create situations where you can have secret connections with people, even if he's separated from his partner. Because your 7th house lord is in the 12th and it's kind of debilitated in Scorpio, it means that there are secret relationships and things that are playing out. And you're like, hey, I want this to be complete so we can move forward. I don't want this to be a secret any longer. What are we doing? So you're going to start getting more impatient with Uranus in opposition to Venus. Venus is at a degree that is associated with Sagittarius. So it's about a Sagittarius having issues, and you might notice that they're like, well, work, but then my schedule, but then this. Like, they may come up with a number of things as to why they are not capable of doing this. North Node Jupiter transits also in your 5th house is like, I want to go out on dates, I want to have fun, I want romance, I want to have a good time. So you're not really wanting for him to wait and stall, basically. There will be plenty of opportunities for other partners to come in. I'm not telling you what to do, but if you feel like the Uranus-Venus thing is like taking too long, with transits through your 5th house, other romantic partnerships and things can definitely come in. That's not going to be a problem. You're going to have a new moon that's going to be on your descendant, and that's going to be around the 19th, and that'll be right along your 7th house cusp, and that's like issuing a fresh start in relationships. So you want to watch 6 months down the road when you have the closing eclipse for that, and that's going to be right around the 28th of October. That time is going to be a turning point in relationships. And also when you have the full moon in Gemini, that will also be a turning point in relationships. So I'm kind of guessing right around the end of October, beginning of November is when you're like, okay, we're deciding what we're doing now. And if he's got, you know, Aries placements in your 5th house, obviously, yes, true love and connection. But if he's a Scorpio, you said Scorpio Sun, Scorpio Venus, and Scorpio, yeah, so 12th house stuff. He's got planets on the North Node. It's important if you feel like you don't want to be hidden anymore that you're really honest about that. You know, being that you have Mars in the 7th house, it's not your fault, but it does mean that you come in and there's some karma revolving around disrupting existing relationships because you show up. So, you know, taking that into consideration, you show up, you guys have had a relationship. It's kind of like, okay, what's going on? What are we doing here? And there is going to be lots of impatience with Uranus in opposition to your Venus. And I could see you kind of pulling back a little bit if you're feeling like you're not getting what you need in terms of him making a decision. And it sounds like he's got an eclipse around his sun, around his birthday time. So a lot of it's going to depend on his own astrology with yours. I look at this and I go, well, Jupiter has yet to go into your 7th house. That'll be next year, so you can have more domestic stuff together next year. Uranus has yet to go into your 7th house, and that's still going to kind of create some upsets. So for the next year and a half, there is a sense of being like, okay, stop making excuses, like get on with it. Like, are we doing this or not? So that way you can be more so actively, openly in a relationship 2024 or 2025. But the eclipse, I think, on the North Node is just kind of you realizing, like, I don't want to be in the shadows anymore. I don't like feeling like I have to, you know, kind of hold this in. Like, let's be more open about things. And as a Capricorn with Jupiter going into Taurus, it's 5th house from your sun. So it does kind of talk more about being able to have that time for romance and togetherness with another person and not wanting to feel like somebody else is kind of getting in the way, you know? But yeah, pay attention to what comes up over this next week with this eclipse. It'll take a couple of weeks to play out. I would recommend going and learning about Uranus in opposition to your Venus because there can be some shocks and surprises in relationships. And I would also recommend going and learning about Uranus coming into conjunction with your South Node. Health issues, digestional issues, food intolerances, thyroid stuff, you know, changes in habits and patterns also. So there can be a sense of you being like a little bit more particular about what you're eating and your schedule and your lifestyle habits. And all of those things should play out just with the Uranus opposition. So I would definitely look into that. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Thank you for being patient. I know that it was a long wait, so I appreciate it. Yeah, the transits have been so intense for Scorpio placements. They have been so intense for Scorpio placements, but that was almost like the preparation for some of the Uranus oppositions that you're going to go through. So yeah, especially in the 6th house, that's definitely when you start to see if there's imbalances in relationships. It always comes through the 6th house. Those of you guys who stayed all the way through the end, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. I know it was a long one. Do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, like the stream if you can for me before we take off. I'm wishing everybody a really happy lunar eclipse, as happy as it can be. Hopefully you guys are going to be having some positive stuff come from this. I know it's an intense time given some of the transits. Please hang in there. I promise you it's going to start getting a little bit easier in this next week. Take baths, stay hydrated. Also check out my Instagram. I'm always posting all kinds of recommendations. I put up some herbal recommendations earlier today. And any chance I can get to give you guys some really great astrology memes, I will do that as well to make you laugh. I will be back next Friday. So Friday will be live tarot readings. We've got an astro weather that's going to be coming on Sunday. I'm going to talk to you guys all about this next week, and with the Sun-Uranus conjunction, where there's going to be lots of opportunities for shakeups and major realizations and opportunities for freedom. If you guys haven't already seen the lunar eclipse video in Scorpio, check it out. It's on my channel. And I also just did a video that's all about Venus going through the sign of Cancer. You guys like my content, you like my work, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, joining my memberships. If you have already seen some of how the memberships work, level 3, you guys always get first dibs on getting readings, so you don't have to wait. You get a reading once a month. It's a pretty good deal. It's about the same price as a reading anyway. So you support my work and make it possible for me to keep doing what I'm doing. I also teach astrology as well as tarot. So if you guys want to check out my courses, go to my website at the links below at beyondtheveiltarot.com. You can learn astrology the way that I practice it, or you can also keep showing up to some of these lives and watching how I practice astrology if you like my style. I offer private one-on-one sessions, so if you want to book one with me, I have availabilities starting in July. Oh my goodness. So I'm a busy lady, but if you guys want to get a one-on-one reading with me, please do consider checking out my website. I'll be back next week. So thank you guys so very much for hanging in there with me, and I will see all of you very soon. Take care.